Hell yeah, brother. I just saw Hulk Hogan right there. The end of COVID Cooties. Juxtaposed against, I think, the Twin Towers in the back and a bunch of real cute COVIDs. We had a bunch of COVID memes at the time. And this was an act of iconoclasm. The idea here is they brought out this new God construct, a devil construct, a devil the atheists would believe in, with the concept of sin that they would also believe in as well, talking about COVID and the virus and the pandemic as being sort of this uh, part of the aspects of what I talk about is how the modern paradigm is based on older religious paradigms, and the virus is a new sin construct. So when they provided the image of the COVID ball, it was this intimidating. It looked like it actually looked like a globe covered in little mushroom clouds, and it was just kind of ominous, like an idol. And people would kneel before it, cower before it, like they do before the mushroom cloud. It's the new mushroom cloud. And so we deliberately defaced it by putting emoji faces on it. And it did take the power out of it. Okay, let's see. 33 people in chat, so we are officially Lodge Open, joined by Austin108, Thomas Hughes, Diana South, Jessica Lynn says, I have a picture of penguins hanging in my house, one my kids made years ago. Awesome. Lots of penguin art here. People have sent me a lot of penguin art and sculptures and coffee mugs, in addition to other penguin paraphernalia. I think I even have a penguin snow cap. Doesn't snow in New Mexico. I'll wear it when the fallout begins. When is that supposed to happen? We're waiting for the nuke. And I'm kind of leaning towards November the 3rd for a few reasons, which we'll get into. And it all ties into the Turner Diaries. And I kind of want to talk about the Turner Diaries a little bit because the author, his name is Dr. William Luther Pierce, is an interesting character. And I was listening to one of his talks about Haiti. Someone had uploaded it in light of the recent rumors about Haitian immigrants eating cats and then Trump talking about it hilariously during the debate and all these memes. But, it's just a psyop. However, this William Pierce talking about it is somewhat significant because he describes what he believes is going to be a bloodbath in the future. And I'm sure the projection date is long since passed. That would be similar to this Haitian slave rebellion, but here in America. So he's really the progenitor of this race war, white genocide paradigm. But this is what motivated Timothy McVeigh, same author. So I'm looking into this author, and I brought this up before, and it cannot be a coincidence. He is the author of the book that inspired McVeigh and largely the far right, as far as like what they call the domestic violent extremist wing of the Republican Party, far right. And the Turner Diaries is highly significant. It refers to the turning point when they come to take the guns. Another point here, it was Waco where they came to take the guns, the 1.6 million excessive rounds and other things. And it's Waco that sparked Timothy McVeigh to take action against the Oklahoma City government building. And it's also Waco that inspired Alex Jones. So it all connects. It all connects, and it's all the same code, and it goes far back. So William Luther Pierce is the chairman of the National Alliance, a white nationalist group, and he wrote the Turner Diaries, which we talked about this in 2020 because they brought it to life when the McCloskeys came out defending their mansion when BLM marched on by. So let me just bring this up, just a quick refresher here. The McCloskeys defending their empty mansion, but they come out in front of their house famously dressed up, and she's dressed up like the Hamburglar, and he has an undersized polo shirt. But look at how they're posing. Now pay attention to the clothes, and now look at the cover of the Turner Diaries, which came out 42 years, almost to the day, prior to this. You see the woman there? Black and white striped shirt, man, open polo. See, they brought the Turner Diaries to life. And the Turner Diaries is also I think there's an undercurrent here of this Turner Diaries nightmare scenario that's been created by the conservative groups, specifically Turning Point USA. So I don't think you can separate Turning Point from the ideology espoused in the Turner Diaries. And this would be Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA. Now, this all ties in to this general theme of white nationalists working with Russia to get the nuke. And all of the predictions have been pointing to Seattle. So that's why I bring this up. Turner Diaries is the link that connects these things. And this author, though, here's where it gets interesting. The author, William Luther Pierce, look at his birthday. September 11th, 1933. Now, Timothy McVeigh, who was inspired by the Turner Diaries that actually contains predictive programming for 9/11, including like bomb-laden planes hitting the Capitol, was executed on 6/11, 90 days before 9/11, at the age of 33. Same with Dave Koresh, incinerated 33. So you can see even here, with this, obviously a provocateur, a Fed, this individual who started this organization, even back then you can see the number codes, September 11th. And today is, of course, September 11th, 2024, so I wanted to talk about that and a few other things. But let me go over the newsletter, and then we'll go through your comments. And I sent this out in the newsletter. If you don't know what it is, it's a burning pair of pants. And I was trying to get the AI to put it upside down against a skyline, but it wouldn't let me have giant burning pants against the skyline. It did let me get away with giant burning pants as long as I didn't put people screaming and running or planes in the scene, because Bing has been lobotomized ever since somebody rendered an image of Mickey Mouse hijacking a plane and flying into the Twin Towers. I mean, this is ridiculous that you're going to just destroy some image generating platform because somebody misuses it. That would be like getting rid of our access to spray paint because some people do graffiti, or take away the crayons because one kid wrote a bad word on the table. It's this group punishment mentality, and we have to reject it, because the group punishment mentality is what goes behind this mind virus, where they want the public to acquiesce to censorship because they don't want the burden of having to critically think. But I was trying to have the pants upside down, so like, liar, liar, pants on fire, and I wanted the pant legs to look like Twin Towers. I thought it would have been, funny, not funny, depending on your level of awareness about what 9/11 was. All right, let's see. Armin Reed, Ted Strike. Oh, yeah, Mizell, Ren 33, Gematria 101. Truman B3000 says 9 out of 11 people still don't know about Building 7. Nice. Thomas Hughes says the best anti-show on the interwebs. I would say this is the only show that is specifically a deprogram. There is no other deprogram out there. I mean, there are some that are very close. Maybe almost, but that's not their explicit agenda. Garrett Summer says Building Z7 enters the chat. Oh, Building 7. Yeah, so the Building 7 phenomenon is one of these examples, I think, of either they goofed it or they were intentionally inserting cognitive dissonance. But it's a 47-story building. Mike, take on it, which I'll get into here, is that a lot of this stuff could have been, like the footage that you get, you can't trust it. It could have been an insert shot. It could have been destroyed in a miniature and superimposed over the news. Like, we have to look at all possibilities and look at who directed it. So we'll talk about Stanley Kubrick. Yep, Kubrick, not Osama, did 9/11. Kubrick, not Lee Harvey Oswald, shot the JFK assassination. Mizell says, I have a sticker from Japan for you, Penguin. Oh, yeah, by the way, we are going to have some stickers made very soon. And the tabloid is going into print later this month, which has had some delays. Dwayne Aubith said, William Luther Pierce was a member of the American Nazi Party, which was started by George Lincoln Rockwell, who was another Poe LARPer. Parody of extremism, exactly. Parody of extremism, just like Nick Fuentes. And I've been calling it out for months. I've been saying if Nick Fuentes gets his wish and they implement Project 2025, his entire family, well, half his family, will be deported. And now I'm seeing other major platforms finally paying attention to this major contradiction. Like, all these white nationalist figureheads tend to be miscast. And I thought it was kind of ironic that you had Ye come out espousing white nationalist talking points while wearing a black hood over his face. But we talked about that when it happened a couple years ago, and that was all preceded by a song called Black Skinhead, if you recall. All of it is provocateur, um, psyops that are driven by agent provocateurs. So it's provocateured memes, but they have this way of doing things I've noticed where uh, they make everything somewhat incongruent. Like Daily Wire, when they still had Candace Owen. It's like they obviously put her there to say things that, if said from a white male, would be perceived as racist and sexist. So they give themselves cover. It's a very sophisticated mind game they play here. Diana South says, thank you for watching the debate so I didn't have to. Everyone's saying that Harris won, but if you go by sound bites and laugh lines, Trump won. That whole thing, and he delivered this with all seriousness when he's talking about, and I actually have it on tweet here, I can probably pull it up, where he's like, they're eating dogs or eating cats, and he's getting laughed at, and he's like, I saw it on TV. Like, he literally said that. I saw it on TV. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have that bookmark, so we'll get to it. Quay said, I'd like to make a batch of stickers for the IPS. I have all the materials. Sure, I want to get some images uploaded to Sticker Mule. Sticker Mule has a great collection of stickers. I've seen a lot. Thomas Hughes says, like the Ruby Ridge pullover. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Let's talk about the Ruby Ridge pullover as well. So it's been a couple of days, but I've been very active, even though we haven't been live. And I have been talking about the psyops of the day. In fact, I've been writing about them. So if you follow me at timosmond.blog, or even the main website, you'll get these links. Diana South says, the Hamburglar and McCheese. Mayor McCheese, talking about the McCloskeys. Yeah, and the McCloskeys were following around Kyle Rittenhouse for a bit. And they ran for office. And every time they gave these little speeches, they would come dressed just like this. They would wear this as a garb. It was like their whole gimmick, their whole shtick. And they're pointing guns at BLM marching down the street. Peaceful protesters. And even if they weren't peaceful protesters, let's say they were violent, like the January Sixers, you still can't go out on your front lawn and point guns at people. That's not how self-defense works. But this is all just a caricature, obviously. It's a hilarious satire. Plain Dakota says the Turner Diaries characters were better looking. Well, this is them 42 years later. Jessica Lynn says Seattle had a power outage today, 18,000 affected. Everyone remember the crisis actor biker guy from 9/11 delivering his script to the MSM camera, says Truman B3000. Yeah. And, we could go back, if you want to reminisce, you got to listen to the very first episode of the Sean Hannity show. He starts his show on 9/11. What does that say? They threw some agent behind the mic. And on that day, the tone wasn't set. You know how it became somber, and we had the tragic events of 9/11. Every day after that, people would say, in light of the tragic events of 9/11, blah, blah, blah. Because everything was somber and tragic and dark and doomy and uncertain. But nobody gave that part of the memo to Sean Hannity. And he was super cheerful that day. And he was taking callers who were like, yeah, I saw this building, it was burning, and I smelled a bunch of jet fuel, and I immediately thought, Osama bin Laden. Like all these fully informed eyewitnesses with perfectly scripted lines, and they just happened to get through to Sean Hannity. You don't just get through to someone like Sean Hannity. They call you. You might call them, but then they'll take your number, they'll do a background check, and then they'll call you back maybe the next day. They vet their callers. I don't. And I'm sure you've all noticed. Okay, let's move on. Auto hoax the Ruby Ridge phony fake show? Yes, we will. We'll talk about that. Okay, let's start with that right away, because let's stay in chronological order here. We're not bound by the 24-hour news cycle, into which they cram 72 hours worth of news, so nobody can keep up with it without following trusted blue checks. Tyreek Hill, Rebel Ridge, Metascript breakdown. I actually watched the whole thing. So I finished watching it. When I put this blog out, I said I watched the first half of the Netflix film Rebel Ridge when it came out last week, and then I saw the Tyreek Hill psyop in progress. The similarities were instantly apparent from the opening scene: racist police brutalizing an innocent black man. So you have Aaron Pierre gets revenge on corrupt cops in Netflix film Rebel Ridge. In verse 4 days ago, Netflix just quietly released the most infuriating revenge thriller of the year. Next, Rebel Ridge review, and this is about cop corruption. While unspoken, the threat of police brutality against black men hangs over the ensuing traffic stop. It opens up with a traffic stop and an infuriating scene. This would constitute concurrent and predictive programming as it was aired before the Tyreek Hill event. Now, if you don't know what the Tyreek Hill event was, he was pulled over. And the way in which it was done, it doesn't make sense if you really think about it. He has this really nice, expensive car. I don't know the exact make and model, but obviously this thing was theater. But the way they pulled him out of it, it was beyond the pale, dropping him on his face. And of course, he's a football player, so it'd be easy to act like, it'd be easy to fall on the ground for him. But I think that the way that the officers talked was also very insulting, mocking, taunting. It didn't make any sense. But let me play this clip, because here he says he was shocked by the body cam footage and that he's, quote, shell shocked.
Tell me what was going through your mind in those moments.
Man, for real, I was like, I was shocked, man. Like it's crazy because it all happened so fast, man. But like for me, man, like it just.
So he's going on about how he was shocked, and then he makes this point about how if he wasn't a star athlete, it could have ended badly. In other words, he could have been killed or something. That's one of the points that he made. And then he calls for change, which is a coded phrase, a word. Change obviously has some significance when you talk about Democrat psyops. So at the end of this thing, though, he does say he's shell-shocked, and he's lucky he was a celebrity because that status saved his life. Tyreek Hill's agent calls for police officers to be fired. Daily Beast: Tyreek Hill shell-shocked after watching brutal body cam video of his detainment. And while he's being detained, he complains about his knee. He said he had some surgery. Now, this is before you see him do a touchdown pass and then pantomime being handcuffed on the field. Video shows officers dragged Tyreek Hill out of his car after he put his window back up. So it's this manufactured outrage. And his outrage is being echoed and retweeted by other NFL players. Additionally, and this is where, well, first of all, this scene happens right after Rebel Ridge. So there's already the coincidence, the eerie coincidence, as the MSM would say. I would call this concurrent programming or even predictive, because it's pretty much the same time. You're watching Netflix, you see this thing happen, then you turn on the news, you see this thing happen, it's the same thing. So I'm suggesting that this is a psyop because it gets the conversation out there. And I haven't done any searches, but I was going to do a search today for Rebel Ridge and Tyreek Hill and see if any mainstream sources have made this connection. Rebel Ridge star praises Netflix for exposing the injustice of civil asset forfeiture. Rebel Ridge, okay, we'll see. But there's quite a lot here. And then Tyreek Hill's wild Sunday in Miami, from handcuffs to the end zone. So I'm looking at the concurrence of these two things. These things are happening at the same time, but then there's more to it. And the reason I looked into this closer is the name Tyree. Because last year we were talking about the significance of the name Tyre or Tyre, or Tyree Nichols. So last year Tyree Nichols was beaten and then died in custody. Total psyop, but it was almost an exact replica, a recreation, a reenactment of the Rodney King beating. So wait, it looks like Rodney King, and then you have Dr. Martin Luther King's daughter show up at the protests. And then they have a eulogy delivered by Al Sharpton at Mason Temple, where MLK Jr. gave his final sermon before he was assassinated the next day. So you got a lot of King thrown in here. Rodney King, MLK Jr., that is, and then his daughter. So we're noticing this stuff. But the name is significant here for a few reasons. You have the Phoenician king, Hiram of Tyre, and then you have who works for King Solomon, and then you have his architect, Hiram Abiff, the Masonic martyr. So every time we're looking at this death resurrection symbolism, the head wound stuff, and the subsequent resurrection, it always tends to point back to the fundamental initiation slash resurrection ritual of the Masonic lore and their whole story. It's about Hiram Abiff. Like, we often talk about Biff Tannen. I call Trump Hiram Abiff Tannen for this reason. But he's the Masonic martyr. Now, this martyr movement, and we're talking about BLM again, starting with this police brutality narrative and how it's fomented this entire movement around it. It's a martyr movement, a martyr cult in many ways. So Trayvon Martin is the first martyr in this cult who kicked it off. And so the name Trey and it's all code is what I'm suggesting here. And I've noticed this Tyre, like Tyree Nichols or Trayvon. And as you'll see, it's a consistent pattern. But it was Trayvon Martin's death that precipitated the BLM movement. Jamie Foxx was the face of this, if you recall. And at the time, he was in Django Unchained, which I'll talk about here in a moment. But last year, Jamie Foxx was in the news because he had seemingly died on a movie set. And then he was resurrected. And then shortly after, there were rumors that Jamie Foxx had been cloned. Well, after he dispelled those rumors by saying he wasn't a clone, a movie came out called They Cloned Tyrone. So the significance here, Tyrone, Tyr, this repeated name, Tyre, and They Cloned Tyrone also contains the idea of someone dying, coming back to life. That's another resurrection theme. Further connections, Django Unchained, which ties into the Turner Diary in a way, because you have Nat Turner, the rebellion. And I think the Turner Diaries is kind of a similar, but it's the inverse. It's a white uprising. But Django Unchained was a couple of things about this, actually. Supposedly, Ye came up with the idea for Django Unchained, and it was stolen by Fox and Tarantino. That aside, Django is a slave taking revenge. And as that movie is in the theaters, right when it comes out, you have Christopher Dorner. Now, this ties into the bigger picture here. Christopher Dorner was a cop. He said the LAPD was racist. He was, how old was Christopher Dorner? If you know, just put it in the chat. So Christopher Dorner goes on a killing spree, killing other cops because he can't get promoted because he's facing systemic racism. Well, eventually, Christopher Dorner ends up in a cabin in the woods where he's incinerated. So like Dave Koresh, he's another 33-year-old Burning Man. You have that whole repeated theme here, but they incinerate him. Yeah, he was 33. Let's Go, Dinah South, GCF. Awesome. So what do we have here? Black cop taking revenge against racist police department. Now, in this movie, Rebel Ridge, while this character is going after the police department, he's also somewhat making an ally with a black police officer who herself is a victim of systemic racism and isn't promoted because she's not part of the club. They make that very clear. It's part of the subtext where she's almost an ally for a moment. They have a common interest and she recognizes it. That they have a common interest against the police because they're black. So this is part of the theme with Django, with the Christopher Dorner, that is a connection here through Jamie Foxx and They Cloned Tyrone. It's just a recurring body of symbols and names. So the idea here is this name Tyree is a reference to the martyr, the Masonic martyr. And this is all very consistent with the general collection of symbols and themes going even up to the more recent, as we've been talking about, Derek Chauvin, George Floyd. which interestingly, Derek Chauvin, George Floyd, that bit of footage, 846, which 9/11 kicks off at 8:46 a.m., that footage inspired the riots of 2020. And it inspired Jordan Peele to make the movie Nope. And the movie Nope has the killer chimp, the monkey that kills all the people. So what is the connection here? Well, he said that the movie inspired Nope, which was actually about an alien craft like a UFO, but it did have this scene that seemed to me out of place about this murderous chimp. And I think the connection here, though, that he said it's about the spectacle that introduces the mind virus that causes people to act. So that's the connection here to the ape and the rage mind virus that will be used as a justification for increasing censorship because people are catching it and acting on it. Let me go through your comments. We'll continue a bit more. Tomanoid says, Arne and Stallone both attacked police headquarters. Ryler says, Trump was demolished in the debate. Are they going to put Kamala in? I don't think the debate matters. I think it's a predetermined outcome. It's not like they fake everything and then the election's real. If they're fake school shootings, if they fake planes going into buildings, if they fake pandemics, if they fake all these various political football issues with PR stunts and hoaxes, if we're inundated with psychological operations 24/7, and if they've merged the entertainment media with the news media to entrain our minds to the propaganda, then we can go ahead and dispense with the illusion that we somehow have control over the outcome by voting for option A or option B. And they're not going to put something in there to appease anybody or because they have to, because we have power and that they're somehow answerable to us. My take on it is that it's going to be Kamala based solely on Netflix predictive programming, which has been a pretty, I would say, accurate guide thus far. All right, already 100 messages today. Very busy chat. Ifepe said that he seemed less energetic and unenthused. Elephant Tusk says election. Well, I can point to so many different examples. I mean, the most recent one, Civil War. So Civil War was directed by the guy who wrote 28 Days Later about the rage virus that comes from the apes, the chimps rather. But Civil War is about Trump being, it's obviously based on Trump. It's a civil war. Trump gets shot by Kamala Harris. Like, we just say it as it is. It's Kamala Harris kills Trump. Just like Betty Pearson, Kamala Harris takes over, steals the election over Vault 33, and after her successful coup, you see this foosball table, and the foosball character they zoom in on just happens to look exactly like Donald Trump, and it has a spot of blood on the right side of the head. We were talking about this leading up to the fake events of 7/13. But I actually found the debate to be hilarious. I don't know if I was the only one laughing. I thought it was funny. I thought Trump was funny. I thought she was funny. Not funny, but her reactions were genuinely like, she couldn't believe that he was saying they're eating dogs in Springfield. Now, is that the same Springfield where the Simpsons are? And didn't the Simpsons have some kind of Kamala Harris predictive programming? But you can't trust Simpsons predictive programming. A lot of it's fake. Because truthers fake stuff. Truthers psyop themselves. It's ridiculous. Junder said, I missed the debate and the dog eating news. Yeah, I think if you were listening last week, you caught the news that Laura Loomer eats dog food live. But she doesn't eat dogs. And that's what she's doing to make money. She's selling more of her dog food by Positive, P-A-W, Positive. And I don't get any kickbacks. There's no code. I'm not going to eat dog food live for money. But at least she's not taking $100,000 a week from Putin, like Tim Pool. Okay, now, he did say, and I'll get to these clips. He did say, "I saw it on TV." I mean, that is, I'm going to have to use that. That is such a great defense. I saw it on TV. I'll scroll down. And by the way, we almost had a 9/11 jumper, but thankfully, singer John Bon Jovi, and this was in Nashville, Tennessee, stopped her. He happened to be filming a music video on a bridge, and a 62-year-old woman tried to jump over the rail, and he goes up and he saves her. Again, this is totally not a PR stunt, totally not fake. I believe it's true. Supposedly, according to this, he persuaded her to come off the ledge. I don't know if this has any deeper significance other than 9/11 and some kind of feel-good psyop. By the way, CNN fact checkers, they have counted the number of lies or falsehoods each person presented. Kamala, 1. Trump, 33. Yep, Donald Trump made 33 false claims. I have a lot of great stuff here on my links. I have to make sure we go through this all in order. But the Rebel Ridge thing, interesting in itself, just because it's another example of concurrent programming we can point to. We have this. I don't know what to make of it. Somebody handed Joe Biden a Trump hat and he put it on. And so what is this? Joe Biden wearing a Trump hat. Just if you haven't seen it, totally gone. Now I got to play this. I'm talking about, false claims. This was shared by Fakeologist. This is a podcast, the Stuttering John podcast, and this is a 9/11 liar. This is embarrassing. This is from 2015. Listen to this confabulator.
Is the anniversary of 9/11.
Yes.
And, I was in Manhattan during 9/11. I lost two friends, one of which who was a flight attendant on the plane. His name was Mac Taru. God bless him. And it was so sad because after, I got an email from somebody saying, I just want to let you know that, your friend Mac was on the plane. He's dead, and he leaves behind this beautiful little girl. And they showed me a picture of his little girl, and it just tears. At your gut strings. Or was that gut strings?
Heartstrings.
Heartstrings, yeah. And then whatever. And then the other one was a good friend of mine, Sean Lyons, is his brother, Patrick.
So this guy's claiming to know two people who died on 9/11. And it's coming back to haunt him. This is 2018. I've known a few 9/11 liars. A few. And I put an end to it by asking for details. It never works when you ask for details. The whole thing just falls apart. I put out a newsletter today, State of the Plane. And the artwork here is the bottomless pit at the base of the One World Trade Tower. Very biblical scene there. It's all interesting. Ground Zero. You have the Stanley Kubrick monolith. Think about it. You got the Stanley Kubrick monolith, the Hilton Hotel, overlooking Ground Zero. They communicate the predictive programming, the storytelling, the meta-scripted story, the way they paint our zeitgeist. It's communicated through architecture, through movies, books, literature, memes. But architecture is a huge part of it. So the One World Trade Tower obviously has a lot of significance. Opened 13 years after the twins went down on an 11/3. It's 1,776 feet high. Looks like a big syringe, which is probably not a coincidence. 1776 is a reference to the building of the Tower of Babel. 1776 AL, the Masonic calendar, their history. Not 1776 AD, which is when the Illuminati was founded, or America, or rather both. But then you have the memorial pit where last year, if you recall, a 33-year-old nearly fell into the reflection pool. And I think the reflection pool is a reference to Revelation 9/11. It's the bottomless pit. A man was arrested in New York on Monday accused of jumping into the 9/11 reflecting pool. The man, 33, injured his leg. Now, I think there's a great deal of significance to the injured leg. And I think it actually ties in to kneeling, as in taking a knee. I think there's a deeper significance to it.
As a doctor,
We talked about that last year. But the image that I generated for today's newsletter has the bottomless pit with an angel coming out, and it has a UFO descending. It has an EMP pulse lighting up the sky, planes falling down, and then the One World Tower in the back. So if you subscribe to the newsletter, you get this artwork free. So today's the anniversary of the biggest PSYOP spectacle of our lives so far. We'll discuss its significance and what it means according to the different perspectives one can take from within the mainstream mediated world view. The prevailing view is that it happened, although the hows and whys are debatable. As an informed skeptic, my starting point is fake until proven real. We consistently observe the poorly executed psyops perpetrated by the propagandists performing magic tricks for the masses. Yet the skeptic's perspective is instantly discarded. And why wouldn't it be so? The massified mind, the perfectly conditioned true believer in mass media, exited skepticism when the ubiquitous screen became the arbiter of real or fake in their minds. And by the way, the screen is what Stanley Kubrick was referencing with the monolith. Like 9/11 was a movie. It was a movie projected into the news, onto the collective psyche as a real event. And they merged the two. They merged the movie screen with the news screen, the real and the fake, the dreaming world with the waking world. And that's what 2001 actually represents, 2 into 1. The zeros, you can think of those as the sun and the moon. As they have the monolith with the eclipse over it, it represents the merging of the solar, the lunar, the subconscious and conscious, the movie and real. So the process that we all go through, it's unavoidable. We're all programmed to be believers. We're trained on, more or less through conditioning and habit and tradition, we're trained to just believe that the screen has, whatever's on there has been vetted. Like, we don't have skepticism programmed into our analysis, except in a very partisan way. Like, the other side's news is fake, my news is real. But it's not true skepticism. So if you believe that some people have died, your argument stems from information that was filtered and contextualized by the movie magic enhanced version of events. And this movie magic enhanced version of events was provided by government controlled media. So if you're still of the belief that there were people who died in some capacity, you have to at least be honest with yourself to say, well, my source is government controlled PSYOP media. The statement, I believe people died, is not the equivalent of I know people died. They're two different things. And I wouldn't say that. I would say, I don't believe anybody died in the 9/11/01 terror attacks because evidence indicates these were simulated as part of a global psychological warfare attack to effect a mass paradigm shift, tighten world view control, and maintain the balance of power between the mediated masses and the power elite. Facts support my informed disbelief. The low information belief of the I saw it on TV crowd weighs nothing compared to informed disbelief. The tears of crisis actors don't have any kind of pull on my take here. Informed disbelief weighs way more than low info belief. And we don't get a lot of 9/11 callers, or at least 9/11 liars. Again, it stopped when I started asking for names, but I want to point out, in Trutherville, it's still very much a standard belief that people died, and that it was done by Bush, Cheney, Israel, reptilians, direct energy weapons, take your pick. So they all operate on the premise that it was real. Let me catch up on your comments. I saw something interesting here about November the 3rd. Slick Rick says, possible predictive programming for 11.3 Seattle. Now, let me bring up one thing about 11.3 Seattle. I started paying attention to that date, 11.3, before I knew that that was the One World Tower's opening date. And these dates matter. The Pentagon's construction begins 9/11, 1941, 60 years prior. It's 77 feet tall, and after a 77-minute flight, Flight 77 hits it. These things are all connected. 11/3 date for the opening is highly significant for a lot of reasons. But I first paid attention to this in July of 2020 when the NHL revealed their newest team, the 32nd team for the National Hockey League, Seattle Kraken. And it had this commercial that was 1 minute and 13 seconds long. And I remember, wait, 1 minute, 13 seconds, that's when the Challenger exploded. So then I looked into it, and then it turns out that Space Shuttle Columbia was the 113th shuttle, and it blew up. So there's a theme coming up here. So then I see the Seattle Kraken commercial, and it looks like an EMP hitting Seattle. And it has this image of a Kraken embracing the Space Needle as part of the anchor. All this ties into the huge body of symbolism connecting the right wing to the northwest, to Seattle specifically, and some kind of EMP nuke attack. That's when I started paying attention to it. Slick Rick says, watch the Seahawks-Ravens game on 11/3. Will do. Truman says, is it possible Alec Baldwin is deep faking as Trump? That's an interesting question. I would say it's highly significant that he played Trump on SNL. The twinning is highly significant. He shot a guy. Look at Alec Baldwin's victims. So he goes on the shooting spree. He kills a woman who's 42, Helena Hutchins, who is from the place where Hunt for Red October takes place, about a nuke in a submarine. So you have that again, Kraken theme built into it, because he's in the movie Hunt for Red October. Then here he is shooting the other guy, Joel Souza, whose birthday is 6/14, Trump's birthday. And then he gets away with it. Alec Baldwin has the trials dropped. He gets away with it. He gets away with shooting somebody 2 days before Trump gets, or it was the day of. It's right about the same time Trump gets shot, and then Trump gets off as well. So Trump gets away from how many felonies? 34? Just as Alec Baldwin, who's a twin of Trump in this programming context, gets away with it. And it made me remember that Trump had said that he could go onto Fifth Avenue, take out a gun, and shoot somebody and get away with it. I remember that statement back then was just showing how brash he is, and how, in a way, there's this kind of a parallel. He got away with murder. Alec Baldwin got away with murder. So there's some kind of a story being told there with this parallel and all these characters who twin as Trump. We talk about Robert De Niro, who's been a part of this. Ryler5 says, one thing for sure, those towers could not have been controlled demo. It would have caused major damage and could have flooded the whole city. No, those towers were taken down in a controlled demolition. That's the only way they could have been taken down. What you saw on TV was an augmented virtual reality experience, augmented reality experience, where they dress, like, for example, you see these reporters talking about, oh, there's a hurricane here. And they're leaning over 45 degrees, and they're like up to their waist in water, it looks like. But then you see somebody in the background just walking their dog, standing up vertically. Like, they fake stuff. They enhance what happens. So for the most part, these psyops take place behind closed doors, so you don't really see it. You see people outside. You see hundreds of police cars and lights. That's your only visual evidence that something happened behind closed doors. But most psyops are closed movie sets. Since this one was done in full view of the public, they had to perform some physical acts. There had to be a real magic trick. There had to be something there. So obviously there's a controlled demolition involved. And the fact that this event had predictive programming going back decades means that they had decades to plan it. You have the brightest minds on the planet, the best directors, government mind control globally, all involved in this operation. Like, it's not a stretch to say it was simply a run-of-the-mill controlled demo. No space lasers, no tactical nukes, nothing special. Just special effects. Same thing with the moon landing. Special effects. People are like, there's a secret space program. That's why they faked the moon landing. No. Science didn't get us to the moon. Special effects did. Similarly, with 9/11, special effects made it look like it was more than just a controlled demo. Messianic Charlatan says, Stuttering John is the Anthony Cumia media orbit. Fakeologist really dupers delighting us. Oh yeah, there's this claim here that fakeologist is Anthony Cumia, which I don't believe. I don't believe. I mean, I can hear some similarity, but I think it's because they're both Canadian. Dinah South says, the tower ascends 69 stories. Which building are you talking about? I'll get back to that comment. I'm going to mark my calendar for 11/3. Slick Rick says, mark your calendar 11/9. I'm not doing any calendar-based predictions, but I will do predictions based on reading the curve. You know, that's an actual part in Leave the World Behind. Again, Leave the World Behind, anagram for Behold, the End War Live. They have this part where he's talking about the curve and you can read what's happening. This guy's talking about not just the stock market, but bigger trends. And then you can get ahead of the curve if you can kind of just read between the lines. And you can read between the lines by looking at Netflix. You can get an idea of what the zeitgeist is being painted up with, what is being set in our expectations, what the masses have as far as post-hypnotic suggestions. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Armin Reese says, what do you make of Kamala Harris and her name in the stars? I saw that. The Chained Woman, Andromeda Constellation. I'll see if I can pull that up. It's in our Gilded, right? So there are these two stars, part of this constellation, and their names, the names of these two stars are, or make up the name Kamala Harris if you read them backward. So let's go ahead and pull that up really quick here. I think that's very interesting that her name, it's all in the stars. And there's every indication, again, that every single person is an actor. It's all scripting. So here you have it. Alamek and Sarah or Harris Kamala. Fascinating. What do you make of this? It is an astrotheological cult. Ryler05 says the NHL predicts everything. Jennifer Reeves says, headline I saw today, Bon Jovi talked a woman off the ledge when she was about to jump off a bridge. Yeah, and we were just talking about how the guardrail on the Titanic, the iconic guardrail that they were leaning on when they made the cross. Now, that's probably significant, too. He says, I'm the king of the world. We're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, this is interesting. He says, I'm the king of the world, and he puts his arms out. And this is James Cameron. So there has to be some kind of deeper significance to this now that I think about it. He's forming a cross, but he's that famous guardrail on the Titanic that he's leaning against broke off the Titanic. And the Titanic is a metaphor for the West, the sinking of the West. It's a very significant prop, and we often see it popping up in the news in different contexts. Wow, yesterday, Carnival cruise ship hits ice in Alaska. It's Titanic moment. But yeah, they checked it out, and apparently its guardrail broke. And then recently, Trump was in the news using the Titanic theme song at his MAGA rally, and he caught some flack from Celine Dion. New photograph reveals decay of Titanic and collapse of its iconic railing. The ship's iconic bow has broken off. Says the scene is from 1997 movie where Jack has his king of the world moment and held Rose. Okay, see Rose, there you have it. So he's making the cross, Jack, and then Rose. The Rosicrucian, Rose cross. The rose is the goddess, cross is the god. This is basic Rosicrucian, Masonic, or even, I guess you could just call this alchemical symbolism. So there is some deeper significance here. Not surprising at all. We'll have to dig into this a little deeper. But the rose thing, very, very significant. I'll go back to this. So many examples I can point to. But in fact, recently we were just talking about the Coma White video where Marilyn Manson plays JFK as the second coming of Christ who dies. And Jackie Kennedy is played by Rose McGowan. And I remember at that point noting the Rose Cross thing built into it. But this is, again, highly significant that the railing broke. No coincidences on the world stage. Gematria 101 says, the U.S. flag proportions are 1 to 1.9 and each stripe is 1/13. So 119, 113. Howard Boyd says, Timmy is my bro. Thank you for joining, Howard. Gematria says 6/14 is Flag Day. Right. And okay, now here's another one. In the more recent movie, Don't Look Up, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, it's the Earth getting hit by a comet. So it's the Earth as Titanic. It's the same metaphor. And the comet is ice. It's a big iceberg hitting the Earth because we're driven by capitalistic greed. So the Earth is being destroyed by climate change. Yes, it's all metaphor. So the iceberg is just the symbol of this thing that we're all ignoring at the expense of Gaia, the Earth, our collective survival. So they put Leonardo DiCaprio as the face of that movie for that reason. But interestingly, and this is the movie Don't Look Up, it says that the iceberg is going to hit the Earth, the comet is going to hit the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. A comet poses the ultimate threat to life on Earth. It strikes in 6 months and 14 days. Everything will be destroyed. So again, that's Trump's birthday. He was born 6/14, 1946 during a blood moon eclipse, part of the culmination of the Babylon working invocation of the Antichrist with Jack Parsons, American counterpart of Aleister Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard, and movie star Marjorie Cameron. The embodiment, the physical incarnation of the Whore of Babylon for that special rite where they summoned the Antichrist spirit that became infused with the developing Trump fetus, who was then again born on that special day, Flag Day. Truman B3000 says, time for bed, but I'll leave IPS on in the background to complete my evening deprogramming. Awesome work, Tim and the think tank. Yeah, I don't want to alarm you, but even though it's deprogramming, if you're subconsciously taking it in, it might actually be programming you. So, I mean, you can trust us. We're not going to lead you astray. Violet Pangon says, the Rams play Seahawks in Seattle on 11/3/2024. Rams was used before 2/22/2022. We predicted they would be involved in war. At the Super Bowl with Ukraine colors, they won on Sunday like Black Sunday. Okay, yeah, there's definitely something to that. And, of course, Rams colors, the blue and the gold, fascinating. Definitely interesting here. And yes, sports are a huge part of the programming. Just as big as movies and video games and comics and books and sitcoms. Tomino3 says, Alec Baldwin in Mission Impossible Fallout gun scene. Okay, I'll take a look at that.
I've ruined your day, haven't I?
Okay, see, Alec Baldwin has his gun to somebody's head.
Oh, and you were doing so well up until...
Now, if you're just listening, he puts a gun to somebody's head, the guy turns around, pulls his trigger, and nothing comes out.
Till then. And I think this one's loaded.
He says, I think this one's loaded. So that's not only predictive programming, that's kind of like an insider joke. Because this whole thing at the Rust movie production, that whole set, the whole thing was fake. Helena Hutchins didn't die. If she was even more than just a CGI construct, an AI rendering, this person does not exist.com, saving money instead of hiring real crisis actors. Isn't that sad? Crisis actors don't have a guild. They can be replaced by AI, but Hollywood gets to protest against this, like real actors with the Screen Actors Guild. The GAGs, the Government Actors Guild members, don't have any representation. There is no GAG. I made that up. There's not a GAG. But yeah, that's an indication there that the whole thing was a hoax. Just one of many. But the timing of Baldwin being set free, and he cried. Yeah, Baldwin walks away a free man. Look at the date, July 12th. When was Donald Trump shot? July 13th. And then Trump charges dropped, I believe, on the 15th. On the 15th, federal classified documents case against former President Donald Trump was dismissed. So Trump gets dismissed, Baldwin gets dismissed. Getting away with murder is the theme. Ryler says you can't take towers that big down. Yeah, you can. It happened. Look, there's a thing. If you're bringing up space lasers, you're in the terror. Let me just break this down really fast. The mainstream view is MSM. And by MSM, I really mean mainstream mediation, but because it includes the big picture. So if you're a believer in whatever happens on the screen, you're in the MSM box. But if you think, oh, wait, that couldn't have happened as described, something else had to have happened. Jet fuel couldn't burn hot enough. Maybe it was the chemtrail juice. What's in the chemtrail juice? Did chemtrail juice burn the towers down? And they start running through their minds, conspiracy theorists, like, oh, was it lasers? Was it a tactical nuke? They add on to what the mainstream mediation says. So I call them MSM plus. MSM plus is a subset of MSM. That is, it takes for granted the reality of the MSM view and then it adds on top of it. So that's further from the truth than MSM minus, which is the skeptical view, where you don't believe it unless the facts support it. So you've gone into MSM plus territory if you're saying that this was more than a controlled demolition enhanced by movie magic. Stanley Kubrick's best work, 100%, says Portal Complex. Gematria says, or 11/6, the day after election. Well, remember the Batman movie, which came out on March 4th, 2022? I was like, it's code. March 4th, right-wing terrorists. And the whole movie is about these terrorists who Q, in the movie it's Riddler with all the questions like Q. Riddler inspires his online activist terrorists to blow up a dam and flood the polls. And the midterm slogan for the GOP was, flood the polls. And the movie ends where Batman is saying, Gotham is underwater. It's November the 6th. So he's walking through town. He's walking through Gotham holding a torch up to his waist in water. So 11/6, after the polls get flooded. So that is an interesting connection there as well. Violet says, mark these dates, 11/3, 11/5, 11/6, 11/9, 11/11. Yeah, well, 6/11 is highly significant, and 11/6, the reverses are, because it consistently ties to the nuke, to the atom bomb in the hands of domestic violent extremists. Even the movie Oppenheimer, he's wearing the badge, K6, 11/6. The film is an IMAX film, and we're talking again, Christopher Nolan, the Nolan brothers, Jonathan Nolan, Fallout, Westworld. But the Oppenheimer is about, of course, the destroyer of worlds, which is a reference to Revelation 9/11, Apollyon, Abaddon, the destroyer. But Oppenheimer was an IMAX film that was 11 miles long. Look, the Oppenheimer film reel weighs 600 pounds and is 11 miles long. So the 11/6 code is all over this thing. And 11/6 or 6/11. And 6/11 was the date that Timothy McVeigh was executed at 33. Timothy McVeigh, inspired by Waco. Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco. A couple nights after Netflix releases Waco American Apocalypse, and they cite the 1.6 million rounds that triggered the response from the ATF. January 6th 1.616. Dominion getting a lawsuit against Fox, 1.6 billion. So the 1.616, these are all codes that continually reference this insurrection thing. Not to mention the 11/6 event or the 6/11 event, this whatever's coming. The Turner diaries come to life. Jungle Jim says, was Hoaxbusters call controlled op? Oh yeah, I remember the Hoaxbusters show. I mean, hoax busting is something they treat very carefully. You know, and it's like, I was responding to a tweet today, and it was from Nick Fuentes, and here's what he said. And I'm tired of this line of thinking here. And if you agree with Nick Fuentes, you should just say to yourself, I agree with Nick Fuentes. Like, that should stop it. You should really think about that. Here's what he said. Everyone knows 9/11 was a false flag created to justify surveillance in a global war. But the element no one is allowed to mention is the role of Israel and the Jewish neocons in the American elite. Israel was the main beneficiary of 9/11. That's what truthers believe. That's at the core of it. That's what they end up believing. And this is kind of standard orthodoxy trutherism. The problem with it is this, and this is my response. Wrong. The thing we can't talk about is the entire thing was a simulation presented as real, a deep fake. 9/11 was a deep fake. The Jewish scapegoat is a red herring that feds like you wave around. So if you're following Nick Fuentes, that's on you. But I'm saying you're following either a Fed or somebody who's just been utterly duped by federal provocateurs. The whole thing's a psyop. So there's no reason to say, I know who did it, or to be mad about it. Like, what did they do? Again, if nobody died, then what are you so mad about? And if you really follow the logic here, and if nobody died, then who tricked who? Like, who's being tricked here? Is American media tricking everybody else? No. Just like with the space program, there's ubiquitous global agreement. It is monolithic. That's why the symbol of the monolith is so appropriate here. It's monolithic, but they don't want you to know, so they give you red herrings so you can run circles, just follow these guys around, give them money, time and attention, and you get played. Portal says, bro, Lucky Larry was able to bypass asbestos removal. See, that's what I'm talking about. All these little planted narratives are planted there. So the news media gives the official story, and they're like, no, some people are too smart for mainstream, so they're going to do their own research. So what do? They give you the research materials, but they put it on these banned websites. So on this banned website, it says this guy who's Jewish got money from 9/11, and these Israelis were dancing. They want you to carry those, quote, red pills. They want you to be a propaganda mule for alt media so that nobody calls it fake. So the idea that somebody did it for money and ultimately it was because Jews, like, if you're still at that Nick Fuentes level, I'm just saying, it's been 23 years. We've had plenty of time to figure this out. And once we got past the fact that there weren't any real planes, that there were 88 plus drills by the NRO being performed that day, there were like 1,500 plainclothes cops and firemen doing live action role play as victims and witnesses. Like, we've got past this point so far that we shouldn't be falling for red herrings and thinking it's a whodunit mystery that you solve from home from your computer laptop. It's not a whodunit, it's a what is it? And we've answered that question. It's a psyop. Pengu33 says, True Lies, that movie had nuke detonation, James Cameron. Oh, okay. True Lies, I'll have to look at that one. Yeah, any narrative that gets you to say that's why they took down the towers is a fake narrative. As fake as any manifesto. Oh, that's why he shot all those people, the manifesto. No, that's a movie prop. Don't fall for the movie props, the planted narratives. And if your starting point is somebody did it, then every story that follows is contained within the MSM box or MSM plus if you're not satisfied with MSM. My perspective is MSM minus. I subtract from what they present on the screen that which does not comport to reality. The map is not the territory. IFEP-A73 says, loose change is what got me looking at things differently. Yeah, and see, loose change got everything wrong. However, that's how controlled opposition works. There was no other alternative explanation that was coherent or cohesive, and they put something together. That's what they do. They know that a lot of people are going to see all these anomalies. So all those people who are looking for anomalies are a problem. Hey, they saw through our illusion. What are we going to do? So they create a counter narrative. So that counter narrative that the truthers hold is not the truth. It's an alternate lie. And so the truthers have been liars this entire time. They've been given an alternate belief system that doesn't take them outside of the MSM box, but instead makes everything scarier. Why do you think truthers are so agitated and angry? They're mad at 9/11. They will screech, they'll rage. A lot of them are still triggered. Why? Because they're inhabiting a nightmarish version where it's worse than the news reports and nobody cares. The normies are just so apathetic. They're in a dream world. And it's like, well, no, you're in a nightmare and they're in the dream world, but neither of you are awake. I'm awake. As in, I have situational awareness and I take into account what is not on the screen when I look at what they're showing me, because I know that they have the capability to fake things, to augment things. And even if the news story that you're watching this present moment is perfectly real based on reality, it still rests upon an edifice of lies. Dwayne Abith says, there's no reason to be angry about 9/11 unless they're angry at themselves for being duped. Oh, yeah. And I rarely have people trying to, cling to the old myth anymore. So let me go ahead and move on to this next article. So that was the newsletter. I'd gone through the 9/11, my point about how you may believe people died, but you don't know. So we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill, Rebel Ridge. We kind of brought that up. Missing cats in Ohio, PSYOP. We'll get to that. 9/11 is a contemporary myth. And now here's something, too, the scapegoats. I'm glad somebody brought up, when we got that Nick Fuentes perspective up here, because the scapegoats that you choose are what they, I think, primarily bring these events out for. They need you to choose your scapegoat and to divide or to take a side accordingly. So who do you blame for 9/11? Choose your scapegoat. Who do you blame for the weather becoming erratic? Choose your scapegoat. If you're on the left, it's climate change. If you're on the right, it's geoengineering. Or God, because he's mad at liberals. That's kind of how it falls in with 9/11. If you're a mainstreamer, it was done by obviously radical Islamic terrorists, but if you're mainstream leaning left, it's because of what America did. Or if you're leaning into the conspiratorial realm, you're going to have alternate explanations, but ultimately it's going to lead to Israel. I don't know they used to say Illuminati, secret societies, globalists. They used to use euphemisms, but these days they hardly mask it. And I'm saying that both these explanations fall short of the truth because both of them assume a thing happened. So note, the radical Islamic terrorists are innocent, and so is Israel. It's Stanley Kubrick's fault. It's the PSYOP entertainment complex, and it's global. The same people who are faking the space station faked 9/11. We're talking about people like Stanley Kubrick, James Cameron, and many other metascriptors. Next, let's talk about evidence over ideology, facts over feeling. This is a quote by Mark Twain. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. So truthers are not a minority. A trutherism is actually just the opposite of wokeism. So it is a majority position. It's like a major chunk of the political landscape. So they're not even edgy or cutting edge or fringe, really. And they've been grafted onto the GOP. Why do you think Trutherville is centered around Trump worship? It really is like Trump, the deep state, QAnon. I mean, it's pretty much corrupt. But news consumers self-organize along ideological lines based on the premises they accept consciously or unconsciously. And the sorting mechanisms include political footballs, psychological operations, culture war narratives, and challenges to traditional values. They throw these things out there to get us to self-organize along these lines, to split. The world stage is contained within a political horseshoe, and it is comprised of polarized opinions. These things are set diametrically opposed. And I talk about this a lot. Needles versus guns, for example. These are consistent issue. Like these issues, it's interesting. If somebody grabs onto one and takes a side on that one issue, they will be aligned on every other issue with everybody else who has chosen that same exact position. It's consistent. It's mind control. But the majority of conspiracy theories are believed in because they are contained in the far right side of the mainstream box. And a lot of the things that truthers believe wouldn't even be in their heads if they weren't essentially alt media consumers and being target marketed. And the alt media conspiracy theory universe of ideas is, again, it's a subset of the mainstream. So it's just ironic. It's ironic that truthers are a product of government media propaganda while they're given this paradigm where they're told that they're opposing it. Like they think they're fighting the Matrix. It's like, no, you are the Matrix. These propaganda mules, they are reflexively loyal to the counter narratives, just as the mainstreamers are to the mainstream narratives. It's anybody who still says people die in psyops, yeah, they're in that box. If you still think people die in psyops in 2024, good for you, truther. I mean, I'm sorry you haven't figured your way out of the box yet. We call people like that death clingers. Death clingers. People must have died. Some people must have died. They can't let that go. Or if they're outraged. Like when I say there were no jumpers, no dead jumpers on 9/11. Some people say that goes too far. I agree there were no planes. The Pentagon thing was a missile. And the towers are mostly empty. But the jumpers are real. Okay, I call them corpse clutchers. Like clutching pearls. Like they're outraged that we would suggest these things are faked. And then you have the it's realers. Like there were some people when it came to the Trump getting his ear pierced by an AR-15. Oh, it's real. It's real. Everything else is fake. Everything, moon landings are fake. Every other assassination has been fake. January 6th, fake. I guess Ashley Babbitt's death was a hoax. She's still alive. But this thing with Trump, that's real. Like, where do you go from knowing the infrastructure of media and how it is actually propaganda 24/7 with the full ability to fake things through psyop entertainment, which is what it is. It's like a reality TV show. It's movie magic. Where do you go from that to thinking all of a sudden it became real? The idea that Trump would even be a target for assassination is a joke. Because he is one of the star actors in January 6th, which was 100% a psyop run from the top, and it would have been done with total complicity of both, quote, sides. The illusion of sides is really what keeps people going. Going back to your comments. Oh, hey, good comment. Ifepe says, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we do this with the Chinese back in the day? They're eating the cats and dogs. Yeah, last year, and it was during the dog days of summer, and I think the year before that, it was all about Chinese eating dogs and cats, and now it's the Haitians. Last year it was cannibalistic Haitians, and now it's cat-eating Haitians. And I mentioned this the other day. It's incongruent. How can you be worried about cannibal Haitians one year and then cat-eating ones the next year? I'm like, why don't we deal with the cannibals first, and then we'll deal with the cats? And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of overlap. Like, you get rid of all the cannibal Haitians, and you probably got rid of all the cat killers. But how do you just go from, it's like there's an order of, like the order of magnitudes of difference between cannibals and cat killers. And it's kind of similar how in 2016, QAnon and MAGA was all about save the children from the adrenochrome junkies, from the adrenochrome vampires, save the children from the Satanists and the satanic rituals and the human sacrifices. It went from that to save the children from drag queen story hour. I'm like, okay, so everything's just been tempered down or they lowered their expectations. But how is the same group organized against cannibals and child killers, and then it goes down to cat killers and liberal values or something? But good observation. Everything just seems so recycled. It's so green. They recycle everything, even the propaganda. So again, the main point is this: evidence over ideology, facts over feelings. The informed non-believer has facts on their side. I have facts on my side. When I say something's fake, I have reasons. You say it's real, you have feelings. And maybe even lies. But you have feelings. I feel like it was real. I cried. It hurt my feelings. I saw it on the screen. I saw it on TV, and I emoted with everybody else. Okay, you have feelings. But the facts don't support the narrative, the story, and they haven't ever since. But the production value is so terrible, and we're film critics principally here. You know, we're not paranoid conspiracy theorists. We're film critics. And their special effects are so terrible, and they have been for a long time, and we've been commenting on it, but they're so bad that anybody paying attention sees through it. They bank on people paying half-assed attention. That's why they cram 72 hours worth of news into every 24-hour news cycle, and there are more streaming shows and movies on Netflix and Amazon and Apple TV that you could watch. Even if you had it on 24/7, you couldn't keep up with it all. They want it like that. They want you to be inundated so that you don't pay attention too much. And so if you're like 90% absorbing fiction, video games, and then 10% news, think about how that distorts your perceptions. Your subconscious isn't delineating between real and fake. And if you're mostly absorbing fake, sitcoms, reality TV, I think it's mind-bending. They're trying to change your frame of reference, insert things into your frame of reference, promote a worldview. So maybe you're just watching some dumb reality TV show. Well, even if they're just doing mundane things, every premise from every conversation is going to be based on the mainstream box. But most people are immersed in what Huxley calls the sea of irrelevance. So there's just too much there, I think, to expect anybody to be able to parse everything and have a clear view. You can't get a fact-based perception on things, though, if you're always relying on blue checks or influencers or networks. And it's not just the lies, but it's also the omissions, lying by omission, by what they selectively focus on. But the bigger point here is that news media isn't reporting the news like you think it is. You know, it's kind of a common misconception that news media is reporting news. But what they're really doing is they're implementing a pre-written agenda, a prefabricated set of historic events. So when you're talking about a 9/11 and you're like, oh, this is a tragic event or this was a terror attack, if you still think it was a terror attack, you're still living in the movie. On TV, in the movie infused reality, it was a terror attack. But in reality, if you were behind the scenes, this was a PR stunt, a movie, a film, a psyop planned decades in advance. It was a military operation, essentially. You could call it psychological warfare. But when you also look at the various components of it, nothing that they presented is outside the scope of movie magic. And they recruit the best for these things. But I think that by keeping us inundated in entertainment and movies, it makes the fake news stuff more believable. And then, since they've already saturated the collective psyche, it sets their expectations, and they see it on the news, and then they reinforce it later with some movie version of the event. But by having entrained our minds thusly, they've hijacked control of history. They make history. In fact, in that movie Fly Me to the Moon, they even kind of joke at the end. Woody Harrelson is in the movie, and he talks about how, we made history. Catching up on comments, Lean Dion, yes, part of propaganda is repetition and advertising. Advertising is based on the theory that you will make a yes decision after you've been told to buy it 10 or 15 or 20 times. Repetition. How many times have you experienced or seen without even realizing it? We'll say a climate catastrophe where they set the premise through movies and through dystopian visions that things are getting worse, and they provide models to support it. So there's that big picture stuff, but then the smaller things, like the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers were taken down so many times before they were taken down in our minds. And sometimes through reference, through visuals, but it's like a theme. They've injected it into your mind. Alien invasions, we've been prepared for that. But you may not know it until after. We may not, like, for example, the connection I made earlier with Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro gets shot on the head on TV. He's a presidential assassin in another context. And so just having these two roles built into him, and then he associates himself with Trump by challenging Trump outside the courthouse. So when you look at De Niro, just like you look at somebody in your own life, a family member, a friend, you see this person, but you also have the backstory. Every other, quote, scene that you experienced with them, the memories you created together. Well, every actor, you've seen them in all these different movies. When you see them on the world stage, you have this human being, but you also have all the associations, your memories with them. I mean, they're on the screen, but they're still there present with you in a sense. So there's a composite, there's an amalgamation. So when you see Robert De Niro outside the courthouse ranting at Trump, you would have certain associations, whether consciously recognized or not. And so when I saw him there, I thought there's got to be something to it. And then it just hit me. He's Travis Bickle. He's Murray Franklin. He's the racist, xenophobic senator getting shot by machete. Like, all at once, all these different roles were actually portraying Trump getting shot for ranting against immigrants by some nutcase. And what did we see happen? Exactly that. And it was really to a T. The role from Machete that Robert De Niro played. But what I'm saying here is that what they're doing, this is entrainment. It's all about association, putting things into the realm of possibility. So De Niro has been associated with certain hot-headed characters. And also with the image of the gun to the head. Look at all the movies with the gun to the head. And we were just talking about this the other day with Colt Gray. And the image of him with a dead deer, and he has blood on the right side of his face. And even this had significant connections to the Trump thing. But it's all in the iconography. You'll find many roles. Like the iconic role, let me just pull this up. If you look up Travis Bickle, the iconic image that comes up from Taxi Driver is where he makes his hand gesture, where he's pointing his finger to his head, like he's about to shoot himself in the head. You look up Deer Hunter. Again, Robert De Niro, Russian movie, gun to the head. Then you look up, we'll go Joker, Franklin Murray. And famously, at the end, he's shot in the head on TV by Joker. And again, Joker is based on, in this movie, it's based on Travis Bickle, who's a Robert De Niro character / presidential assassin. And this gets incredibly deep because Travis Bickle inspired John Hinckley to shoot Reagan and James Brady. And of course, we talked about this. Rosie O'Donnell called the Trump assassination attempt hinky. Probably an insider joke. But we're talking about the role of these characters, these actors like Robert De Niro and Alec Baldwin, two majorly Trump deranged figures. And look how both of them have popped up this summer in correlation to the Trump court thing. Let's Go quotes me here. When I say something's fake, I have reasons. When you say believe, you have feelings. Yeah, and we have to make that distinction. People in Trutherville are all up in their feelings. Bunch of crisis actors. Or death clingers. And that's cool. It's morbid. Like, hey, I don't have any reason. This is not a reasonable belief. But I'd like to believe at least a few kids died. You know, maybe a few people had to have died. A few people burned to death. Just a few. I just can't let that go. Fine. Fine. Cling to the corpse. Hold on to the... It's like these people running around holding dead kids for the camera. It's grotesque. You know, but the difference is you're not being paid to be a crisis actor or a media advocate. And why would you be an advocate for mass media atrocity propaganda designed to gaslight minds? I mean, why would you do freelance work that you're not getting paid? Like, why would you volunteer for the PSYOP entertainment complex? Why would you join the dark side? Like, at this point, you should understand that skeptics aren't just calling it fake because we like being in the know. We're calling it fake because it is, and it actually matters for a lot of reasons. And if you're on the side of media as a believer, you're like a believer in a fundamentalist cult, a doomsday cult. You long ago lost the moral high ground. They lost the moral high ground a long time ago. And the intellectual high ground? Well, if you're responding to feelings and not reasons, if your feelings are more important than reasons and facts, then you kind of lose that as well. Thank you, Let's Go. He says, happy Hoaxiversary Raft. Proud to be floating in here with you all. Yeah, Ifepe says, I was shocked to see Melania calling out why no one's investigating anymore. See, the Melania Trump thing isn't saying it was fake. Like, it's fake. Nothing happened to my husband's ear. It's miraculously healed. No, she's saying, why aren't we investigating the real reason he got shot? That's the meaning of her sentiment in this. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Here's a picture of her some QAnons were sharing where she's wearing this hat. And Kabamur Tegeta said, when the Pleiadians told us that Donald, Melania, and Barron Trump had traveled on Pleiadian crafts, Melania wore this white hat. Believe it or not, Melania Trump wearing a white hat was taken as evidence by QAnoners that she, Donald, and Barron were taken on UFOs. They also believe that Barron is the son of Princess Diana and Trump. Melania must not know. And that's kind of interesting too, considering, I mean, it's a small world, I guess, in this arena here, but Donald Trump impregnating Princess Diana, Barron Trump, I get that. But then if you go back, you can find in the tabloids, John F. Kennedy Jr. was seeing Princess Diana. And Ghislaine Maxwell had slept with John F. Kennedy Jr. So it's like, wait, JFK Jr., Princess Di, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Trump. It's just very incestuous, you know, at the top of the Illuminati dung heap. Okay, moving on. I think I found it. There's a couple of things here. Other things I wanted to get to. Got a comment from Complete Conscious... Oh, yeah. Conscious Daughter. I'm not sure if you brought up the death of James Earl Jones. Haven't figured it out yet. Is there something symbolic? Yeah, I was thinking about that too. 93. Obviously, it's not a extraordinary claim to say that a 93-year-old would die. But the timing of the death, the date, is there a deeper significance to it? I'm kind of leaning toward yes. I don't know what yet exactly. But the Darth Vader connection is probably one of the bigger ones. Okay, here we go. Melania Trump. She says, where's the accountability for the attempt on my husband's life? So this is what the conspiracy theorists are meant to think. The conspiracy theorists are meant to think that they tried to kill Trump and it was a cover-up. They're not allowed to know the whole thing was fake.
To end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
This is such an alternate reality game. We, who does she mean? Alt media. The media is lying, so you truthers out there, find out who tried to kill her husband. And how are you going to find that out? Oh, listen to Tim Pool, who's getting paid good money to do what he does. Listen to Laura Loomer. Listen to anybody on Rumble. Go to Twitter. What does Q have to say about it? And then you just fatten yourself up on Truther chicken feed, get hooked on hopium, and then you can become a propaganda mule for the NWO. And they pay you in Truther chicken feed. And nothing burgers, by the way. It's bleak. Surprised people still fall for this. So this is total misdirection. Melania demanding answers. I mean, come on, I'm demanding answers. Where's the cut on his ear? Let me play this clip. Tyreek walks into the locker room moments after this. This is from T. Armstead. His eyes were red, filled with anger and pain as he's telling me what happened. I feel the pain of my brother. Seeing this makes it worse. It's completely unnecessary. So for those who don't know, there's a movie out right now called Rebel Ridge, which I just recently watched as part of my research for this. A former Marine grapples his way through a web of small-town corruption when his attempt to post bail for his cousin escalates into a violent confrontation. So his money is unjustly seized. It's a police brutality scene. And when I watched this, it reminded me of, there's another police brutality scene in Third Body Problem. I'll have to pull that scene up here. I just got it in my notes. But it's a thing with Netflix. So when someone in the chat had said, hey, you got to see this movie. It's going to have some kind of significance to what's happening on the world stage. And sure enough, it does. So here's a short clip of the arrest video.
Why don't you have your seatbelt on? Why don't you have your seatbelt on? Like what? Why do you have it on?
So the scene here, Tyreek Hill is in his car, and it escalates within the first 30 seconds where this cop provokes him, I think. But this is very well scripted.
Hey, keep your window down. Keep your window down. I'm gonna get you out of the car. As a matter of fact, get out of the car.
Give me your ass, mama.
Get out of the car.
Give me your ass, we'll break that freaking window.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car right now. We're not playing this game. Get out.
Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. What part of violence do you understand?
Okay, now they slam him down onto the pavement, and they're wearing these are Miami police, motorcycle cops, and they've all got these brown helmets. So they look even more intimidating. They look like the android-looking cops in THX 1138. They, like, if you were to put together a uniform for like a New World Order cop, it would look like these guys. And so these aren't regular police. They're from a motorcycle division. And so here's from THX 138, George Lucas's first film, released on a 311, by the way. But I think it's about thought crimes or so. I'll have to watch it again. But again, here they are, being unnecessarily rough with Tyreek Hill. And, you know, crisis actors are, generally nobodies you don't hear about. Here's a celebrity doing something that is likely or that is obviously a psyop. But I think they were able to be rough with him because he's a football player. So it wasn't really tough on him.
I'm getting arrested. I'm getting arrested, Drew. I'm getting out, bro. God damn, twin.
When we tell you to do something, you do it.
I'm getting
You understand?
out. I'm getting out,
You
bro.
understand? Not what you want, but what we tell you.
And look at their big old boots. So this is all propaganda. this every screenshot here, the messaging here is pretty clear. I've seen some of the images that go off on the news, and it's designed to be evocative and to create rage. And now here you have other NFL players retweeting this video and expressing their own outrage. And I'm going through the comments, and for the most part, there are people calling for the arrests of these officers. So this outrage is manufactured and it's staged, and it perfectly comports with Rebel Ridge. And Rebel Ridge is about the follow-up revenge, the follow-up retaliation. And after Tyreek describes his shell shock, he says it's time for change. So I'm thinking, okay, again, change is a loaded word. So we're looking at BLM. There's something else. So I don't know what's going on with that yet, but it's just now kind of percolating. Mango Penguin says, mind control is a serious topic. I could barely fathom the lawsuits being submitted once this true realization hits the fan. Here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. Under our direction, because if we don't do it, it won't get done. I'm convinced of this. We will organize the largest aggregate of media skeptics that we can, not by waking people up or converting them, but simply by sending a strong enough signal to those who've already figured it out. And there's enough in this body of media skeptics, auto hoaxers, fakeologists, that we could constitute a great apostasy from the MSM church, creating an effective third branch of media, going from controlled mainstream and alt to the parallel media. And the parallel media is only accessible to those who include in their assessment of media the existence of psychological warfare as the standard operating procedure and the entrainment of entertainment with future news for the purposes of news bending. Anybody not on the same page as that just won't get it. But I guarantee that as the numbers grow, as the parallel media fills out, more will start to look and pay attention. Because a lot of people, late adopters, wait till they see where the numbers are going. We are early adopters in this branching off, this schism, this quarantine. But I say parallel media for a reason. We are not we're not anti-CNN. I say that I'm anti-anti, but I'm also anti-pro. And that's what I mean when I say I'm not in the info war. This is off-world stage. You have to be against the reflexive anti, because as we've been describing all day, it's controlled. Alt mind control. Like, oh, I don't fall for that mainstream mind control. I do the alt mind control. Way harder stuff. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And if placebo effects or anything, if psychosomatic illnesses are a thing or effects, it's very unhealthy. Violet Pengon says, Trump did bring up nukes at the debate, had nukes in the video before his rallies, warnings of nukes. Interesting. And keep in mind, too, the Trump head wound and the nuke scenario have been paired together in many different examples that we can point out. Like that Washington Examiner article talking about the 42 miles in America that are the most politically significant are the 42 miles between Butler, Pennsylvania, headshot, and Palestine, Ohio, toxic airborne event, mushroom cloud. Predicted in white noise, but predictive of some conflict involving Palestine. Dwayne Abith says, trust the plan. The Pleiadians will rapture all of us and we will live forever. Jessica Lynn says, calling QAnon's truthers is insulting. You know, having looked at this closer, because we briefly touched on Donnie Darkind, and I listened to an interview with this guy. So Donnie Darkind was this Donald Trump avatar with glowing red eyes, preaching the gospel of Christ. It was so incongruent. It was creepy. Here's this guy LARPing as some kind of oracle. Like, I know about the Antichrist, and it's Trump. And he's preaching the word of God, but he's got a Trump avatar. and he's got this huge following. Well, somebody figured out who he was. Turns out he's a major pro-Trump guy. But all he does is he spews pro-Trump rhetoric on Facebook, and he gets a lot of money somehow from ad revenue. And he just spews regular Trump claptrap he probably doesn't even believe in. The only reason he got any attention is he's a black MAGA speaking as such. So they're always happy to tokenize. That's kind of what they do. And he rose to MAGA fame with one identity. He met Candace Owen, hung out with Donald Trump Jr., had all these photo ops. But on the other hand, he's running this Twitter scam or this Twitter LARP where he's pretending to be this prophet warning us of the Antichrist Trump. So which is it? But he had huge engagement. I mean, the engagement was incredible. And then he gets on to Tim Pool. So just think about that. He gets onto a mainstream alt media platform, Tim Pool, who's talked to the president. Like, that's how close. So it shows you that all of these big truther channels that promote Q are faking it. None of them can possibly believe it. There's no way that that guy that says that JFK is wearing a Trump suit really believes it. But they're pandering to brainwashed people with mental malware just from all this overconsumption of conflicting propaganda narratives. Like, basically, we're looking at mind war casualties. And this is by design. It's called an active measure. And we're living through one right now. And this is actually a term, I think, in Russian psychological, let's see, bring this up, Soviet mind control techniques. So an active measure, the secret history of disinformation, here we go. Psychological Warfare Dictionary. It includes a wide range of tactics, but dissemination of propaganda, front organizations. Donnie Darkind was a front aimed at manipulating public opinion and decision-making processes. The goal is often to destabilize opponents and weaken alignments. So what they're doing is what I call, I mean, I like data poisoning, but they're mud flooding Trutherville with nonstop disinformation campaigns. Historically, active measures, and by the way, the Mandela effect is a low-grade active measure. Active measures have included complex operations such as spreading disinformation, orchestrating smear campaigns, and psych warfare to sow discord and confusion among a target population. So Trutherville really consists of a target population. They said, the people at the top of the capstone level of the program said, a large swath of the population isn't going to swallow the mainstream fare. Target that demo with alt media. And alt media will consist of acceptable counter narratives that don't challenge our authority. It doesn't challenge the program. In fact, it deepens the level of programming. It terrorizes them. Who are more terrified right now than the believers in the MSM or MSM Plus? If you're an MSM believer, you have to accept the world's about to end because climate change. It's a doomsday cult. You have to believe in all the weapons of mass destruction and the official versions of all these things. So you already live in a very scary world. But if you step into that MSM Plus box, or you step into Woke Town on the left side, the counterpart, you're inundated with even deeper levels of fear, higher levels of psychological terror. So now you are a carrier of mind viruses that make you not only more afraid of the world, but now you're a super spreader of this, left or right, wokeism or trutherism. And I'm saying that you're a propagandist. You are part of an active measure that targeted you and converted you and basically has turned you into a propaganda mule. And if you're still lunking around on your back, if on your back you have a bunch of corpses, a bunch of fake dead people, if you're still pining for fake, like, you know how embarrassing it's embarrassing. I get secondhand embarrassment watching Alex Stein at that Uvalde city council meeting crying about the fake dead kids. And I tweeted at him and I said, fake dead kids' lives don't matter. And he blocked me. But imagine carrying the weight of all these dead people on your back, crusading for the truth, waking people up, and nobody cares. It's like, well, no, you're basically tormenting, you're self-flagellating. You're virtual signaling. I mean, you're virtuous, I guess. You're fighting the power, but really, you're suffering unnecessarily. The people always whining about chemtrails are going to die of chemtrail lung if they don't quit. Now, chemtrails don't exist, but there are such things as placebo, nocebos, and psychosomatics. You could psychosomatically induce yourself a bad case of chemtrail lung. So I got into this conversation with a guy on Twitter named Snide, and he said he believes that there are people in Ohio from Haiti that are eating cats. And he said he's 40 miles from Springfield. And what I said to him is, people who are geographically close to PSYOPs tend to believe them more without any more evidence other than the hearsay that we all get. So we all get the same hearsay or see-say. You see it on TV. But it's fake until proven real with facts. So what I said to him is, you must learn to disbelieve by default, or you will be driven mad with the masses in the coming years. And his response was, go to Facebook, Mr. Everything is Fake. Watch the videos. Jesus, people, it's not that freaking hard to verify something rather than running your mouth and muddying the waters. So Snide tells me that I can just find the evidence on Facebook, and I looked. There are videos where it's 30 minutes of people talking, but no evidence. Anyway, I just called him, well, show your evidence, Mr. I saw it on Facebook. I saw it on Facebook isn't evidence. Extreme Groundskeeping said, oh, okay, at one point, I changed the lyrics of The Ballad of Billy the Kid to Christopher Dorner and played it for a couple of law enforcement pals. Yeah, Christopher Dorner's story was pretty viral at the time. And it was 100% concurrent programming. I didn't know it at the time, but concurrent programming with the Django Unchained, which was also tied into the Trayvon Martin BLM and Charlottesville riots and all of that. Now check this out. This is from Michael Thalen. A Redditor was dragged into the pet eating fears, and he found the picture of a guy that people were sharing of a Haitian carrying a goose. And this picture was shared by Laura Loomer. And she's like, this guy's carrying a goose like it's a bag of Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, you eat dog food. But anyway, this migrant pet eating fear got some Ohio-based Redditor to go check it out. So he looked into it, and apparently the story, long and short of it, is I spoke to the individual who took the photo, cited as proof that Haitian immigrants are eating cats, ducks, and geese in Springfield. The photo wasn't taken in Springfield, and there's no evidence the man is Haitian. So there you have it. Nothing to substantiate it. And this is an interesting development. The left-wing media has no problem calling it all fake. The Independent, Trump's ear looks like it couldn't have gone through less. Trump's ear appears to have come out relatively unscathed from the July 13th attempt on his life. New York Magazine writer Olivia Nuzzi visited Mar-a-Lago, and she said Trump raised his right hand, grabbed his ear, bent it back and forth. Didn't need a snitch, he said. A stitch. Usually something like that would be considered a surreal experience, where you sort of don't realize it. Yet there was no surrealism in this case. I felt I got hit by a bullet, and I knew it was my ear. But Newsy wrote, quote, the ear never appeared to have gone through less, except there's this tiny patch on the tiny sculpture of the skin, a minor distortion, but it resembled not a crucifixion, but the distant aftermath of a sunburn. Again, a lot of skepticism here. So I go to the comments, and let's see what Normieville has to say. Are they willing to auto-hoax this selectively? And even if they do, they can only step in ankle deep. They can't really go all the way in. They can't really say, well, if fake, then what? If fake, then that fireman's not dead. That his wife's not in mourning. The funeral's fake. You know how many people are implicated in this? The Secret Service, fake. The photographers there were in on the fake. It implicates so many that calling this a PR stunt or saying that this was Trump getting sympathy votes doesn't do it justice. That's why the word hoax isn't good enough. This is far beyond a hoax. But even those who are willing to entertain the idea that Trump cynically manipulated the world by pulling off a stunt, they can't go far enough to realize the immensity, the scope of it all. They don't have the off-world stage perspective. Vic says, even when you get grazed by a bullet, there would be signs of damage, a scab or a scar. Worse if it's cartilage, but he has nothing. Craig says, I personally love the bandages. It showed how pathetic his sheep were when they copied it with napkins. The entire thing seems very WWE-like, says David. It's sad that someone had to die for Trump's free publicity stunt. See, you see the error in his ways? David says it's fake, but somebody died. That doesn't make sense. But that's where they're left with. See, they don't have the full scope of it. So for them to call this fake, they have to also accept the notion that Trump would have somebody murdered for a PR stunt in front of a big crowd of people. They can't figure it out because, again, it would mean that the ambulance there, the hospital, the funeral home, the White House doctor that talked about Trump's ear, both sides of the media, just like 9/11. A lot of people can't get the big picture through their heads that for it to be fake, it means monolithic media control on a scale that people like David here cannot even fathom. So does this mean he paid attention in acting class, said Tim. Well, keep in mind, too, he had a award-winning reality television show for a long time. Ralph W. said, I was initially skeptical, but I'm coming around to the belief that the shooting was staged. Now, that's ironic and funny. I was initially skeptical, but I'm coming around to the belief that the shooting was staged. No, you were anti-skeptical because you believed it was real. You became skeptical when you considered the evidence first and decided that you had a premature conclusion. So mainstream media is anti-skeptical from its very premise. So saying I'm skeptical is just kind of funny. Because when I say skeptical, I specifically mean suspending judgment until you have more information. So if you looked at the thing from the very get-go and said, hey, he just got shot, it looked real, it's real, and you go from there, then you're chasing second shooters, third shooters, Chinese space lasers, Israel, reptilians. You go down all these rabbit trails, but if you suspend judgment, you're like, wait a minute here. Now that this other facet has come out, it seems more likely that this is a hoax. Michael here. Now this is fascinating. Okay, this is a great comment. He said Hulk Hogan showed him how to do it in the ring when they needed to show some blood. A tiny razor would be pulled when they were down on the mat, creating a small cut on the forehead, which would bleed all over the face. No way Trump was cutting his face, and they needed an area a bullet could go by without causing much issues, so they used the ear. That thing healed too fast for a 78-year-old man. So the Hulk Hogan connection is fascinating because at the RNC, Hulk Hogan said, it just occurred to me, out of nowhere, totally spontaneously, I remember bleeding from my face, looking down at Trump at Hulkamania, and then running off to victory. And now the same thing happened, but our positions were reversed. And then Trump blows a kiss, and it's because it was literally reversed. There Trump was, bleeding on TV after cutting himself, looking at down, and Hulk Hogan's looking up at the screen. But that was like from one WWE Hall of Famer to another. It was like an inside joke. It was all staged, says Vic. Okay, there are so many comments here. I'm just bringing it up here. The big bandage for what? I think he had something in his hand to cut his ear. But look at these comments. These comments here are just so wrong, just so mistaken. Steven says, sadly, the whole thing backfired and an innocent person paid the price. So they cannot separate, and a lot of truthers can't either. They can't separate fake from real. They'll say, oh, it's half fake, half real. Some people died. If that's your mentality, then half the moon landings were real, half were fake. I mean, no, you can't mix real and fake. By the way, we were talking about Rebel Ridge, and Secret Morpheus brought up the movie Ruby Ridge, because it kind of calls that to mind. So Ruby Ridge is a story about this standoff, a siege by the, well, it was a cabin that was occupied, but it was the Weaver family. August 21st, 1992, situation turned violent. There was a surveillance team of U.S. Marshals inside the Ruby Ridge property, and there was an exchange of gunfire. So Ruby Ridge and Rebel Ridge, there's an obvious correlation here, and there is a siege involved in this. But the movie Ruby Ridge, Synchro Morpheus points out, it starred MAGA conspiracist actor Randy Quaid, and he did something else too. He did something called Star Whackers? Like way before Q, Randy Quaid was saying that there were Illuminati were killing celebrities. The Quaid conspiracy, Star Whackers. I haven't watched it, but I saw some of these interviews. So he's part of that side of comedian actors who are tied into right-wing politics, kind of like Roseanne Barr and many others. But so it stars Randy Quaid as Randy Weaver, but also Kirsten Dunst. And that's highly significant because she's the main actress in Civil War. And Civil War was directed by the guy who wrote 28 Days Later, The Rage Virus, that came from the apes. And the Rage Virus is going to be blamed for what causes the Civil War. So it's all well integrated here. Kirsten Dunst being on this Ruby Ridge. A couple other notes here. And this is all from Synchro Morpheus. He says, looks like Kirsten Dunst starred in Ruby Ridge movie as well. She was in Civil War and played the fake Albanian war victim in Wag the Dog. And Wag the Dog is a movie about how Hollywood special effects can augment the news cycle, how they can fake things into existence. And then we have another comment here. Randy Quaid starred in the 1989 movie Parents that had predictive programming for the Trump assassination attempt. And his brother Dennis Quaid is playing Ronald Reagan in the movie who survived an assassination attempt. Fascinating rabbit trail. I'll have to continue to go through. So I want to show you this picture because this is propaganda. This wasn't some random event. This guy just got pulled over on the way to the game and just happens to fit the narrative established by Rebel Ridge. So look at this cop with the knee-high boots and the big black helmet. And you have this football player in pain who just had knee surgery. Although I think knee, like Rodney King, Jordan Neely, Derek Chauvin kneeling, Kaepernick kneeling on the national anthem, BLM kneeling. I think the kneeling has great significance. And I think that the knee injury is some kind of ritualistic kind of aspect to it. Taking a knee, there's something to it because he whines about his knee. So I'm not quite sure 100%, but there's something to it. I have a few other things that connect to this and the significance of knees. Like, do you remember the thing about Joe Theismann and his name spelled like it sounds like Theismann, but Theismann. Anyway, he had his knee taken out, his knee injury, and there was this fascinating connection between him and Alex Smith. Washington quarterback breaks leg exactly 33 years after Joe Theismann. So exactly 33 years later, the whole injury is imitated by Alex Smith. And a lot of people have, I used to talk about this a bit because there's like, these are too many coincidences. And the coincidences go even deeper than what most of the lists here say. 33 years to the day, but there were some other significances. And Thiesman was watching as Alex Smith had his leg also, in the same way. So it says here, they occurred on the same date, 33 years apart, on the same team, in the same city, in identical parts of the field, and the final score of both games, 23-21. So I was looking at this thinking there must be some significance to the taking of the knee. And maybe it ties into something else, because following this, and keep in mind, 33 years apart. So Alex Smith was replaced by Colin Kaepernick. And Colin Kaepernick is associated with what? Taking a knee, kneeling. Symbolically, there's something here. Kneeling during the national anthem before Chauvin Floyd, before BLM started kneeling. And the national anthem is highly significant here. We were talking about the Francis Scott Key Bridge, how it was taken out, and there's some predictive programming for it in a few different places. Leave the World Behind, Mountain Dew. But how the Francis Scott Key Memorial next to the Golden Gate Bridge was vandalized by BLM and replaced by a BLM monument commemorating the 1619 arrival of the White Lion and the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. So 1619 versus 1776, the Black national anthem, Lift All the Voices, juxtaposed against the national anthem. There's a dialectic they set up here, 1619 versus 1776, and it ties into Colin Kaepernick kneeling, and he was the quarterback during the Blackout Bowl, which went dark for 33 minutes, Super Bowl 47. And I think that's foreshadowing, because right now we're in a sort of a Super Bowl 47. We're in the presidential race 47. Jurassic Liar says both broke their legs, knees on 11/18, the 322nd day of the year, 322. Okay, so that's even more, that adds even more to it. So 322 and Templars, or the Skull and Bones Society. But I think there must be some significance also to the, and I pointed this out before also, I was looking at this, I was like, I see BLM kneeling, right? And they're doing this kneeling ritual, but they're also always chanting ACAB, and they're spray painting 1312 everywhere. And 1312, now check this out, on 322, 1312, the Knights Templar were disbanded. The Templars gave up all resistance and suppressed, and on March 22nd, 1322, at the Council of Vienne, Clement V attributed all the possessions. So anyway, 322, 1312. So there's this Templar connection, right? Well, 1312, and we're talking about the taking of the knee, the 322nd day of the year. 1312 BLM graffiti sprayed throughout the 2019 to 2021 protests, ACAB or 1312, and you'll see here. And I would see this on mainstream news. They'd be like, these peaceful protesters, and in the background I've seen 1312, which I'm told means all cops are bastards. But I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a double meaning. Could 1322 be a reference to the Templars? And going even further into this, hands up, don't shoot, that gesture, hands up, don't shoot, is the Masonic grand hailing sign of distress. Hands up, don't shoot. And this ties in, that's what, so before Hiram Abiff, we talked about him earlier, the connections with the BLM martyrs. Before he dies, he says, hands up, don't shoot, like Michael Brown. No, he says, is there no help for the widow's son? But the gesture is the gesture he makes before he's killed. So the connection here, of course, is the hands up, don't shoot, to me, early on was telling me that this entire protest movement is part of this dialectic, the Masonic tiles, black versus white. It's part of the mind control, but the secret societies are puppeteering the marchers, the protesters, the revolution. Lean Dion says that leg break looked savage. Yeah, would they take one for the team? That'd be my question. Would somebody willingly take a grievous injury like that as part of some kind of a psyop? Is it fakeable? That's a good question. Like Lamar Hamlin. Remember Lamar Hamlin died and resurrected on the football field? And everybody was kneeling. So I'm glad we're talking about kneeling. Because Jordan Neely, a Neely psyop, the kneeling is just a reoccurring theme, and the taking of a knee is to kneel. So here you have Lamar Hamlin, and he's seemingly dead on the ground, and he's surrounded by all these individuals kneeling, except for one guy, and the one guy who's standing is named Neil. And I think he's number 33. So that whole event, we've examined this one quite a lot, and yeah, this one had all the same types of symbols here. And I think there's one more pertinent picture. A couple things. I think he raised 3 million by 3 a.m. He was always flashing threes. There's all kinds of hand signs with this particular football player, by the way. And the third degree is when these Masons do their death and resurrection. So here's the picture. And it's so easy to find this stuff because this is what you're meant to see. They're communicating messaging. That's why it only took me half a minute or less to find this picture. See, they're all kneeling. They've all taken a knee, except for the guy named Neil, who happens to be number 33. What the hell is that? And now let's look at the mourning of Hiram Abiff. The death of Hiram Abiff. And if you look at the imagery, what do you have? But you have the representative of Hiram Abiff playing dead, surrounded by all the other brothers. And what are they all doing? They're all kneeling. Okay, let me catch up on comments. DNS561 says the mic level's going up. I replaced the mic at the suggestion of someone who'd commented on one of my videos. Lean Dion, oh, he was 33. Nice. New York Post front cover, all kneeling except 33. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Well, it is believable to the believers. But I find all this stuff eminently unbelievable, like literally unbelievable. I need more evidence to believe it's anything more than some aspect of what I call the PSYOP entertainment complex. So getting back to this, Tyreek Hill talking about his knee is likely a part of this production. Okay, there's more here too. This is connected to it. Kendrick Lamar is going to be performing at the next Super Bowl. So why is this significant? At the same time that Lamar Hamlin was having his heart attack on the field, Kendrick Lamar had received an award for performing Heart Part 5. And in the live performance of this, he's dressed up in white, and he has a crown of thorns, and he's getting smeared in blood. So you have the black Christ symbol, the black martyr, which ties into all these BLM deaths, which is what we're talking about. We're talking about this martyr symbolism. So here he is saying something about women's rights. So this was around, he was chanting about women's rights. Huge part of it here. Loss of women's rights. Kendrick Lamar laments women's rights being lost. Here he is flashing the sign of the horns. He's got his crown of thorns on. But I also want to look at his album. His latest album cover, where you see him as a black Christ carrying a baby. And so in the background, you have the mother of Christ. That would be the Magdalene. Now, the symbolism here goes really deep, and it's highly interesting to me that he's going to be at the Super Bowl. But first, look at this. So he's in white, smeared in red blood, surrounded by dancers in red. Now, let's contrast this with Rihanna in red with her moon bump, her pregnant belly showing. And if you recall, she comes down from the stage, and there's lights in the background like stars, and then she's surrounded by male dancers in white. So red, female, male, white. I mentioned Rosicrucianism, Rose Cross, and the significance of the name Rose. So the Rose Cross, goddess, god, the wine and the bread in the Rosicrucian, Thelemic, the Templar rites, or in witchcraft, it's just symbolic of god, goddess, wine, bread. But interestingly, mix the two, and what do you get? Pink. And this is where the Barbie symbolism comes into the picture. The reason for the pink, or the Templar cross. The Templar cross, we just mentioned Templars, is a white background with a red cross. So this is all tying in to the same story here. But getting back to this, what I'm pointing out is the symbolism here is the merging of the god and goddess. This is the great rite. But now let's look at the following Super Bowl halftime. It was Usher. Now Usher's performing in a white suit, but he's got a phoenix on it. And a phoenix is a symbol of Christ. In fact, if you look up Christ and phoenix, you'll find that that's an old symbol of Christ. Early Christian writers construed the phoenix as a symbol of the resurrection, but Christ himself. So here's Usher with a phoenix on his white suit, and he's dancing with Alicia Keys, who performed the role of the Scarlet Witch, the Babylon, the Magdalene, or Babylon and the Beast. Babylon and the Beast is the newest iteration. This is why you have Barbieheimer. It's a reference to the Beast, the Destroyer, the Nuke, or Godzilla, metaphor for the nuke that came out at the same time, and Babylon, Barbie. But so Kendrick Lamar performing at the next Super Bowl is further connected to this sequence of super mystery Babylon halftime show rituals. There's more to it. The song Heart, Part 5. The heart is the cellist. The cellist is the goddess. This is all symbolism. And so Lamar and his heart, remember Lamar Hamlin and his resurrection. It's all about the resurrection of Osiris or Hiram Abiff. But there are all kinds of ridiculous uses of the numbers, the 33, member of the Big 30. There's just too much about it to go into right here. We've talked about this. It is undeniable. What we're looking at here is partly Masonic theater. Culturally, that's where it comes from, their lore. Old Testament, New Testament, science fiction, Freemasonic lore, astrotheology. Here we have Almanac and Syrah, the stars in the constellation Andromeda, read backwards, Kamala Harris. Catching up on comments. Jurassic Liar says, Damar Hamlin initials. I said Lamar, excuse me, it's Damar Hamlin. DH connects to the resurrection after the head wound on 8/4. Okay, thanks for that correction. And DH, Damar Hamlin, and we're talking about resurrection here. Like they cloned Tyrone. I was talking about the resurrection. We're talking about the martyr story. And I mentioned Travis Bickle as the inspiration for that John Hinckley assassination attempt on Reagan. But Brady was shot, James Brady, who died 33 years later on 8/4, head wound. So again, 33, head wound, 8/4. Catching up on your comments. All right. Let's move on. We talked about William Luther Pierce, born on 9/11/1933, wrote the Turner Diaries, which I connect to Turning Point USA. And it is all connected. Remember when Alex Jones went on Piers Morgan and he said 1776 will commence again if you try to take the guns? That's the turning point, when they take the guns. But that was a response to the DHS appropriating 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition, which Jones said was to be taken, was a threat to the Patriots, that they were going to shoot the Patriots. But look, 1.6 billion rounds. He was activated at Waco, over 1.6 million rounds being confiscated. And then he shows up on January 6th when 1776 is commencing again. Like, this is a world stage actor. I have some good news here, kind of brief. Hunter Biden suing Garrett Ziegler affects us because behind Garrett Ziegler is a computer hacker who has yet to be identified by the mainstream media. And I am suing this computer hacker right now in a Superior Court of California. I'm suing him and Google. Google is fighting right now to be dismissed from the case. They don't think they should be on there because they didn't do it. Somebody was tricked at YouTube's legal department. So we're still fighting over that detail. But regardless, Goldfinch is on the suit. And he's a computer hacker. And I'm suing him for hacking. California Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, among other things. So it's very interesting here that Hunter Biden is suing Garrett Ziegler for the exact same thing. And they don't know yet that Ziegler does actually have a hacker on staff at Marco Polo. When this fact comes out, Ziegler's done. And I think he's already done. Because I've shared this information. I've contacted all the relevant parties and I said, hey, one of these John Doe defendants is a hacktivist, part of Anonymous. Here's my proof. So I don't think it's a coincidence here, but anyway, this just came out. And this is from the New York Post. Hunter Biden is suing Garrett Ziegler and several John Doe defendants. Here it is. Hunter's suit, in which he accuses Ziegler and others. Now, who are these others? Well, Marcus Goldfinch, of breaching computer fraud and data laws by accessing tens of thousands of emails, photos, videos, and recordings from Hunter's laptop. And basically, minor victory. Today, Ziegler was ordered to pay $18,000 in legal fees for submitting a very poorly executed motion to dismiss the entire suit. So the suit's not getting dismissed. It's going to trial in November, and the discovery process is ongoing. And very soon, and it's already been announced, they're going to reveal the names of all the people behind Garrett Ziegler. And that's why George News, who's Marcus Goldfinch, has said that he's out in New Zealand. He said he's going to stay outside the jurisdiction and the reach of Biden's DOJ. And it's because, according to Ziegler, Biden has hired one of his own friends to take him out. In fact, I got a quote from him here. This is just from a couple of hours ago. And this is forwarded by George News from Garrett Ziegler. The Marxist judge in our case with Hunter Biden, who was appointed by Hunter's daddy, who gave Hunter's daddy $2,000 for his presidential campaign and didn't recuse himself, is trying to have me pay for the first portion of the crackhead son's legal fees. Makes me want to puke. More tomorrow. So yes, Ziegler has been ordered to pay nearly $20,000 in legal fees. So this case is not going to be dismissed, and he got fined, essentially, for trying to dismiss it. And George News is the hacker. And that fact is not going to escape the notice of the mainstream media. And it's just a matter of days. I'm counting down the days until he's doxxed. Because when he's doxxed, my case will get a lot of support in the court of public opinion. And it's easy to... There's no way it doesn't rise to the surface when people start looking into this. Okay, I'm catching up on comments. I have some time here. We can open up the phones if anyone has anything. All right, so we talked about Kendrick Lamar headlining the next Super Bowl in New Orleans. So again, highly significant. The Black Christ symbolism is what's important here. And I have so many examples of this. You know, we talk about George Floyd being kneeled on for 8:46 and how that's the same time that 9/11 started. But I just want to show you how we're not cherry picking. We're picking up patterns. Jayland Walker was killed in Akron, Ohio in June of 2022. The officers fired 94 times at him. And what they found out was this. Walker was shot by the 8 police 46 times. So 846. And after his death, there were these protests. And the Patriot Front showed up to protest against the protesters. And there's one shot that made the mainstream news that day that was totally staged. So the Patriot Front goes out there to Ohio, and they confront these people who are protesting, and they end up accosting a man and holding him up. And I'll see if I can find it here, because it looked like Roman soldiers crucifying a Black Christ, but it was Patriot Front with masks and shields, and they were holding a protester and holding his arms out, and he had this agonized look, and it looked like an intentional creation of a Black Christ crucifixion scene. But again, 8 cops, 46 shots. It's all code. That's what I'm saying. All of it's code. Yeah, here it is. White supremacist group marches through downtown. I'll have to do an entire video just going through all the different examples of this particular type of image. But look at this one. The cop with the helmet condescendingly placing his hand on the shoulder of the football player. And I think these cops are being fired. Let me go ahead and do a search for Tyreek Hill right now and see what the latest headlines are, because it's a developing story. Dolphin Tyreek Hill doubles down on demand for the officers to be fired. They want Miami officer gone. Tyreek says he could have handled it better, but police officer who pulled over Tyreek Hill had Bills Mafia as his LinkedIn page. So that's a rebel. Now let me see if this is fact checked. Not true. Interesting though, because the whole idea of Rebel Ridge is there's some kind of mafia operating within the police department. Okay, so again, Tyreek Hill detainment highlights escalation of policing in America. Now, again, Rebel Ridge. Rebel Ridge ending. Police chase. Here we go. Takes on the world of police corruption. It exposes the lesser known real life injustices. This story is not over yet, so we'll continue to follow this thing. But Miami Dolphins football player getting pulled over is more than just a random event, but it's some kind of tie-in to this broader BLM martyr cult. Oh, nice. Plain Dakota says Richie Homie Kwan's death age was changed to 33. I think they try to throw us off. They want us to, like, we're not supposed to be calling things out like we do. So the 34 is the new 33. Trump has 34 felonies. Now it's 33. Just remember, when you see a 34 on the mainstream news, they're just hiding their 33 from us. But all the headlines say 33. Type of way dies at 33. Rap icon dies at 33. 33. And before, I believe he said something in his last message about how you could die at any time. And then he has a song called 34. Fascinating. Lots of this. And what is the connection here? Well, it all connects. The same thing. You know, the 33, the 42. I mean, I understand the obsession some people have with gematria and calculators, because you are indeed deciphering. You are looking at encoded language and hidden meanings. It's there. There is a subtext. The question is, what is its purpose? Who put it there? And I don't have all the answers. I'm not starting off with an answer and then working my way back. Mango Penguin says Slayer's song Disciple from God Hates Us All was released on 9/11. Yeah, I remember there were a lot of God Hates Us All posters for 9/11 beforehand, and I think the song is about, I went to the lyrics, there's a lyric about a man-made virus infecting the world. So you'll find in a lot of the predictive and concurrent programming on 9/11, there were built-in references for 2020. Dwayne Aubith says 34 is a Masonic number because it represents the square and compass. Also, they're considered the first two Pythagorean numbers. Fascinating. Well, I can correlate 33 and 42 as sort of the opposites. You know, he had the black and the white duality, the black and the white tiles. So the white and the black, it's light and dark, up and down, rising, ascending, falling, celestial realm versus the earth. So in the way it's represented as we see in the world stage, 42 is often associated with darkness. Black. You'll see a lot of the psyops with martyrs like George Floyd. These things all have 42s. His drug dealer, Maurice Hill, was 42. His twin, Stephen Jackson, 42. It's so common. You know, it's like, I think it was on 420, Derek Chauvin was charged. And that was, it gets really intricate, though, in the details. Like, Derek Chauvin's wife was arrested for passing a bad check for $42. But the 42s always thrown out there, especially with civil rights. Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42. Rosa Parks was 42 when she went to the back of the bus. And then I think you had that guy's name was it Reggie Gray? There was that fight. And Gray, you know, black and white. Reggie Gray, there's a fight on some dockside, and it was framed. Yeah, here we go. Alleged Montgomery Brawl folding chair wielder arrested. Reggie Gray, 42. And that's kind of interesting because that happened down the street from where the Rosa Parks thing happened. So Rosa Parks wouldn't give up her seat, and Reggie Gray hit somebody with his seat, but both 42. That was a pretty interesting scene. I wonder if there's more significance to the boat and the riverfront here. May have to revisit this one. Chadwick Boseman dies at 42, plays Mr. 42. MLB has they have Jackie Robinson week. They're all wearing 42s. And then the movie version of Jackie Robinson dies at 42. Meanwhile, the National Basketball Association, NBA, has 42s because they're celebrating Mamba Week. They're celebrating the posthumous birthday of Kobe Bryant, who would have been 42. 2020 was awash with 42s, and it's all attached to BLM, to civil rights, and to the black versus white psyops. Whereas 33, in many of these events, also has its appearances, and it always pertains to resurrection, ascension. But it's by use and context. That's how I find their meanings. Mango Penguin said, I heard there's a rap band called Coup. Yeah, okay. Now, I'm glad you brought up Coup. So this is one of the more famous examples of 9/11 predictive programming. I think it's called Party Music. And it has these two individuals remotely detonating the Twin Towers. So Party Music comes out on 9/11. So I looked into the Coup, and they have this other song, and it's a video where he's playing, he starts off Crucified, the singer. And it's like this Wizard of Oz theme. And he's the straw man. So Wizard of Oz. Let me see if I can find the video. Oh yeah, Guillotine. Guillotine, that's right. Okay, this is getting interesting. I'll have to go back and dig through this because Seattle is the Emerald City. It ties into this kind of a part of the subtext here with the Wizard of Oz stuff. But in this video for the Coup, the Guillotine, it starts off with a singer who's blowing up the Twin Towers. Look here, he's a black Christ. He's crucified beneath a basketball goal. And then the video progresses. The band is walking down the yellow brick road. It's a sidewalk. And it's Dorothy, Tin Man, Scarecrow. And they go to the Wizard of Oz, who looks like the Monopoly Man. And they put him in a guillotine. And they chop his head off. So it's kind of this coup, you know? A communist revolution, a takeover, destroying the symbol of money. He's got a top hat. But, so, yeah, guillotine by the coup. Interesting symbolism. There's probably a lot in here that I'm missing. In fact, there's more we can connect to it. You know, fascinatingly, didn't the father of Nipsey Hussle, who died at 33, didn't his father play the Tin Man in Return to Oz? Yeah, Nipsey Russell. His father, Nipsey Hussle's father, was the Tin Man in The Wiz. So that's kind of interesting. Because, of course, this video we're talking about has the Wizard of Oz, and it's like an all-black cast. So that's kind of a tie-in. But, again, Wizard of Oz, Seattle, chopping the head off. There's something to it. The chopping of the head off, too. French Revolution vibes. And, by the way, I'm watching Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix, and it opens up with a decapitation of Marie Antoinette. And the Paris Olympics start off with a Marie Antoinette decapitated. And she's holding her own head at the Olympics, and she's next to the band Gojira, who are playing a French Revolution song. So here's Marie Antoinette holding her own head. And of course, Gojira is Godzilla, which is the nuke, which was referenced in the destroyed Statue of Liberty image, which is right out of Planet of the Apes. Talking post-nuke apocalypse. But here she is holding her severed head at the introduction of what some people call satanic. The word satanic doesn't do it justice. It's far more nuanced. But again, getting back, the decapitation, revolution, the coup, the guillotine, predictive programming. And you would expect, if their work is featured in predictive programming for one event, it's likely significant in other events. Okay, let's go to the comments. IFEPE said they didn't have radio-friendly tracks, but their stuff was deep. Lean Dion says the Coup album cover is literally a towers falling. It was before 9/11. Okay, so that was predictive programming rather than concurrent. So the Coup party music was predictive programming. Slayer, God Hates Us All, would have been concurrent programming because it was released on that day. Although the posters, if there were any posters or promotional materials, it would have been predictive. Okay, let's continue. 737 says, no soldier has fought for American freedom since 1865. Interesting statement. You know, how far back does this all go? How far back does the PSYOP entertainment complex explain everything? In Newsbenders, they made it seem like the Psy-War took over for the real thing after World War II. But, you know, this is where retro auto-hoaxing comes into the picture. I look at the new power structure as a continuation of the old, and so do they. You know, read what the OTO says, what the Thelemites say, what the New Agers say. We're just transitioning into a new age. The torch is being passed. And the torch symbolizes the underground, the secret societies, the mystery schools in the caves, the grottos. So the torch represents the light in the dark that is the enlightened among the endarkened. The darkness is you. They, the capstone programmers, are the enlightened, and they're just passing the torch. I think that's part of the symbolism that ties into the Nipsey Hussle marathon theme and his death. and the passing of the torch. There's so much we can go into here. I was just thinking about Nipsey Hussle's death was being commemorated at this BLM award ceremony in 2019, and at the same time, there was a track called "Time Waits for No One" by Freddie Mercury, and it hadn't been released. It was, quote, hermetically sealed. Now, Hermes is Mercury. Hermes is the Greek version of the Roman Mercury. So, "Time Waits for No One" was this track that they said was, quote, hermetically sealed. And it made me look at it. And it was sealed for 33 years. So the connection here, this song is out in the news as Nipsey Hussle's getting awards. "Time Waits for No One," "The Marathon Must Go On" was his thing. But at the same time, and this was in 2019, Mercury was visible next to the sun. Let's see if I can pull this up. The planet Mercury. So there was this astrological connection to this as well. On Monday night, 2019, November 11th, Mercury will transit the sun. Yeah, there were these Mercury-Sun transits we were talking about at the time. But my point being, that summer, there was this connection between the planet Mercury, Freddie Mercury. Unbelievable. I don't want to get too deep into this stuff, but it gets to be, it could sound redundant. I'm just making the point that this is a standardized language, and it draws from sources that we're constantly finding to be very consistent. IFEP 73 says 200 years if you believe we are in the little season. Well, I think we can make the case that the centralization has increased, that the moon landing dragged mankind. Well, let's start with the atom bomb. The atom bomb reset the world stage, the atomic age. That means as of that day, when this thing became a real threat, now the world is in a doomsday scenario. The end of the world is possible. And every world leader now has godlike powers. So it fundamentally alters the worldview of everybody. So there's this new threat. And that's one of the things that constantly maintains our synchronization, is they do these psyops that affect us all ubiquitously. That's why climate change is like a global belief. The weapons of mass destruction, the moon landing. The moon landing took mankind to the moon. We all went to the moon, meaning as of that contemporary myth, all the teachings of the Church of Nasatology were validated, vindicated. It solidified our worldview. It was a miracle, like Christ walking on water, Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. It's this thing that solidifies that we are indeed witnessing proof, validation of all of our precepts. We're all in this new belief system. So the moon landing was a miracle. It wasn't a scientific achievement. It was a psychological operation, and it serves the purpose of a modern miracle. Then 9/11 dragged us all into the world stage again. The spectacle of it. The entire world now is hit with another reset button. And every time they hit a reset, we're all looking at the monolith at the same time. We're all monolithically entrained. We're all waiting for the next scene, because of this plot twist just took us all for a ride. We're all just suddenly looking at this thing. The spectacle is huge. 9/11 is a huge spectacle. Now, 3/11 didn't have the impact of a singular, devastating, fiery terror attack, but it was something that you were forced to participate in, and you did have visual confirmation every day. Masks on the ground, for example. The new dynamics, the panics, the way people had to socially distance, like it was always there with you. They get you to participate in the alternate reality game, the movie enhanced reality. But they've enhanced that power with modern media. Before that, I think that you had people grouped into different worldviews according to religions. And then you had the scientific paradigm. But you still had different groups, different worldviews, different filters. And the concept of the one world order is that everybody would be synchronized in one religion, one government. And I'd say mission accomplished. Because the advent of the space age delivered a heaven that not only can we travel to physically because our new obelisks, unlike the stone obelisk that the Pope worships at St. Peter's Basilica, the new obelisks can actually fly to space, fly to heaven. They can take you there literally. So they basically what they've done is they've taken the old world order and just updated it. And they've consolidated it. So now every other religion, they're all compatible now. We're all coexisting. You can be a Catholic, a Christian, a Jew, Muslim, a Scientologist, an atheist, and you all accept space. You all accept Gaia, the God construct. You all accept the new constructs that have replaced the old ones, but under a new name. Iran has a space program. Well, a few years ago, there were movements that would throw rocks at obelisks. They would burn them. They burn these effigies of the Washington Monument with dollar signs on it and Israeli stars and stuff. And why? Because they saw the obelisk as a symbol of Baal, of the earth god, of paganism. And yet now they have their rockets. They have their burning obelisks. They're part of the space program. So even though they may have opposed it in its previous form, through the magic of religious syncretism and the combination of science fiction with these older belief systems, this older worldview, they've managed to get everybody under the same. We're all under this. There is a one worldview. And I think the blue marble is key here. When they showed you the Earth as a globe floating in space, everybody was on the same sheet. That's the biggest view. That's the God construct. That's God's eyes view. Esteban says, did you take Dr. Graves' How to Win in Court class? No. I don't have any formal legal training, but I have a lot of trial and error. And what I mostly did is I just referenced previous cases. But I have to admit, this last one, ChatGPT. I used ChatGPT for a lot of my legal work, and it probably saved me a lot of time. But what one thing I had to do is I had to dispense with taking advice from people, especially common sense advice. Like, no, you can't sue Google in small claims in your town, because when you sign up, you agree you will only sue them when they are. And I'm like, well, I'm going to challenge that because I want to bring their lawyers here so I can get them on record as having acknowledged the evidence of this crime. So I had a case dismissed, but I had them on the phone, and their attorneys called me, and I managed to get my enemy at the time, well, at the time he went by MGTV, I had his channels pulled, and mine were reinstated. But that first one was just taking me a step further. And then I learned more about the process, and I moved on, and I did my damage complaint for the cyber squatting, which I'm ready to serve. But I had also had to figure out, how do you sue somebody if you don't know their name? So I learned how to do the whole John Doe thing. But ultimately, I had to wait. I had to find out his name, and I had to get some more details before the court could take it seriously. And this last one, so here I am suing Google and Goldfinch, but I didn't have him served yet. And so I was dangerously close to having the whole thing dismissed. They were going to dismiss it because I couldn't prove that Google intentionally defrauded me, merely that they were tricked, that I would need some kind of discovery, and they might not even stick around if the other party, if Goldfinch, wasn't there. But they gave me time to send an amended complaint and try to serve him. And so what I did is I did some research, and I found that he's on the board of directors for Marco Polo. I contacted them, got their address, and I served him at the business address for ICU LLC. Once I had him served, he's on the hook, Then the thing moved forward and they scheduled a pretrial date. And at the point we're at now, Google is saying, we want out. And obviously they want out because I'm suing for $5 million, and they are negligently, at a minimum, responsible for this. But moving forward, the facts of the case haven't been disputed. So I'm in the right asking for a summary judgment. I have plans. So if, let's say, they do dismiss Google, they're still going to be involved because I am adding another defendant, the attorney or the lawyer working for YouTube that was involved in this. Anyway, it's not over yet. It's far from over, but we've made a tremendous amount of progress since last year. In fact, it's been in the last year, I think, that we've made all the, like 90% of our progress. Most of it has just been kind of blindly fumbling our way through here. And they don't play nice. You know, Google tried to say, they play these tricks. I don't want to get too far into it, but they know how to waste time and money. And if I was paying for legal help, I would have ran out of funds a long time ago. I've ceased asking for support for the filings and everything because at this point, I can't really ask anymore. I think I can only say thank you for getting it this far. And I feel like we're at a point where winning is not quite fait accompli, but there's no way that this guy escapes us because of this other lawsuit. He's going to be named publicly and possibly charged with hacking and computer crimes alongside Garrett Ziegler. And when that happens, my case is made for me. And even better, I will be able to serve him papers directly through his legal representation. And final point, there's a good chance, because I asked for it, there's a good chance that I get a default judgment because he didn't respond to the filing. So I may even get a default judgment, which normally all it means is you have a collectible debt. Like I got a legal judgment against a company I sued once. I was contracting, when I was working for the state morgue, I was also, as a side gig, I started a cleaning company where I would throw away bloody carpets, basically. And the company that I was contracting under, they did this nationally. They would find local representatives and they would get the gigs. And they said, hey, we have something for you. It's a cabin that has a lot of deer mice and they've left feces everywhere. And in southern New Mexico, this species of deer mice carries the hantavirus. So I was hired to do a decon. So I go down there and I take care of it, and the company didn't pay me. And I waited and I waited, and I contacted the client, and they said, oh no, we paid. So I thought that's weird. And I asked for a copy of it, and they were billed twice my invoice, and they paid it, and I wasn't given any. And I had to sue this company. They were in Michigan. I had to sue them to get that money back. And they didn't even bother to answer the phone or show up in court. And so the judge gave me a default. And he's like, well, before you get too excited about it, it's just a collection notice. Like, you still have to figure out how to get the money. So I was like, what do I do? And so I had to figure out how to make that happen, and it involves getting them to disclose their assets. Thankfully, I managed to have a copy of a check that had their bank account number, so I was able to hire an attorney to go to their bank with the sheriff and with a writ of execution, and they just took that money directly out of the account. And that's what I'm going to do to Goldfinch. The instant he is doxxed, I'm going to submit the paperwork, get a writ of execution, and I'm just going to seize the assets, whatever I am awarded. And all of it is going to be publicly invested and dumped into the IPS. 737 says, Tim painted me a penguin smoking weed in a wrench. Priceless. I think I remember that one. Dwayne Abith says, disposing of bloody carpets. Were you working for the mafia? No, I was working for OMI, Office of the Medical Examiner. And in New Mexico, and maybe it's not like it's everywhere, but there weren't any like hard regulations about bloodborne pathogens. And so I realized that I'd go pick up bodies, you know, homicides, suicides, murders. There was one where a kind of a jilted ex-boyfriend broke into his girlfriend's house and he cut himself and bled all over her $10,000 Oriental rug and left after drinking some beers. Anyway, so I have a lot of experience with like disposing of bloodborne pathogens, bloody waste. And I just realized there's a market for it. That people are just throwing their bloody stuff away in the trash, and you can't do that. This is why 2020 bothered me. Infectious waste can't just go in the regular trash. You know how you have recycling bins in front of your house because of climate change? They should have had red biohazard disposal containers everywhere. I didn't see any. Did any of you throw any masks or gloves or PPE into red biohazard containers that were disposed of separately, treated separately from municipal garbage? I don't think so. That's when I knew it was all just a little bit of a diversion, some entertainment from the PSYOP entertainment complex. But anyway, I found that there was this demand for it, this need for it. So what I would do is I would contact, after the facts, I would contact the homeowners insurance, homeowners, landlords, and I would make arrangements. I would take the van and I'd go down and dispose of the bloody mess and then send them a bill. And it was some of the easiest money I ever made. Just basically, I could turn a simple pickup. You pick up an overdose and there's a blood spot on the floor, and you could turn that into a $1,200 day just for rolling up some carpet and taking it to the biohazard bins. All right, let's get back on topic. 737 says, when Tim reads my comments, my son jumps with excitement. Loves it. Yeah, you know, we have a think tank here, because this isn't just me. Like, yeah, I'm suing that White House press corps QAnon guy, but it's really the IPS. They tried to take down this think tank. And this channel was created as a think tank. It wasn't like a podcast. It wasn't a voice uploaded. But it started off as a blank screen and a conversation between me and a lot of people who came to certain realizations. And we start putting our ideas out there, talking. And so this has been an active think tank since 2017. And many people here have been here, you know, from the very beginning. And they've tried to shut us down. And they would have if we didn't go after, if we didn't hit back, if we acquiesced to the censorship, to the demonetization, if we didn't evolve. Like, they kind of turned us into this juggernaut, and they don't even know what they've created yet. They haven't even felt it yet, what we're going to do here. Paradigm shock to the system. They thought they hated flat Earth. They haven't seen. I mean, misinformation is the word they use, but they promote misinformation. Mainstream misinformation, alternative misinformation. And so they're like, oh, we're worried about misinformation. We're not bringing that. We're bringing information. Information they omit. That's the real gift that we're bringing. That's the crack Gwyn that we're raising here. That's the paradigm shock to the system that they're not going to have any kind of defense against. They don't have a straw man to take down the skeptic that actually knows what he's talking about, because we're not low information. A lot of people who say, oh, Joe Biden's just Jim Carrey in a mask. Yeah, it might be true. I don't think so, but that's low information. It's just a claim made off of a few clips. But informed disbelief is a way more potent weapon than just this knee-jerk, I'm going to not believe whatever the mainstream says. And what we're doing is we're amalgamating a large, I think, swath of Trutherville into this. People have figured out that not only is mainstream lying, but alt media is also lying. Like, how many people are still listening? Why are they still listening to any of these alt media types that led them to January 6th, this massive honeypot? And it was a smear attack. It was a way to destroy the credibility of nationalism itself. Nationalism has just been turned into another bad word, like flat. Messianic Charlatan says, Timmy, you're a saint. Only saints get targeted by the spirit world for persecution as much as you seem to have. Well, I would say that the fact that we have been legitimately targeted with censorship, we're not just like you look at Alex Jones, it's all performative. They're going to censor me. They're going to take all my stuff. Has Alex Jones lost a dime to the Sandy Hookers? No, he is the biggest Sandy Hooker. You know who lost money for the truth? Shaq. Shaq lost $20 million. Shaquille O'Neal lost $20 million due to, quote, flat earth ideology. This just came out last week. The earth is flat. Yeah, it is. With those words, Shaquille O'Neal made it to the flat earth community in 2017. But it goes on to say, I said the earth was flat one time, and I lost a big deal, like $20 million, and I got 500,000 hate mails from my fan. I'm not going to elaborate on that. $20 million. See, that's someone taking a hit for the truth. Miss Sonic Charlatan said, who stole your carpet cleaning money? Oh, the thing with that was I was working for an ambulance company. You had all the lifesavers, and then there was me. They had what they call the OMI contract. So I was the guy in the cargo van at the far end of the lot that did the dead bodies, the people that didn't make it. So I was working for an ambulance company, but I wasn't I did have to quit, not quit, but I was kind of let go because they lost the contract. The OMI contract, the body pickup contract, is something they have bidders on, and somebody else got the bid. So they lost the contract, I lost the position, and I kind of moved on. I lost my connection. I no longer now had, like, it used to be at 2 a.m. I'm dropping off a body, and I go through the records and I get the addresses. I'm like, well, who died tonight? I'm looking for anything where there'd be blood, shootings, stabbings, and then I would just follow up. And I no longer had access to the morgue at that point. One of the worst scenes, but best from the perspective of money was I shouldn't even be talking about it, honestly. I mean, maybe it's just grotesque. You know, like there was a scene, the situation where this person was being stabbed by her husband and she runs. It's like a horror movie. Knocking on her neighbor's door, they don't open. So now there's blood on that porch. Runs across to her family's house, and her brother and dad fight back with a knife, and there's like fight back with the baseball bat against the guy with the knife, and there's like literally blood on the ceilings. I mean, it's like these scenes are a lot of work. I mean, I used to have to find friends. I had a few friends that I'd have to, like, hey, can you come help me clean this up? And I'd have to teach them to wear PPE and how to, and that's what I learned about how much smokers are a problem. You put on PPE, you go into the closed area, you're doing the cleaning work, you got to take a smoking break. It's a huge waste of money, huge drain. I'll never hire a smoker again. Okay, moving on. We have a few other things I want to get to tonight. I think I have it all bookmarked. So we went through evidence over ideology. We talked about the 9/11. Patrick Moore said, Tyreek Hill body cam footage is upsetting, reminds me of Rebel Ridge, which everyone should watch. So he's recommending some propaganda that mimics or that seems to be related to this. So I think I said this the other night. It's like life imitates psyops, and psyops imitate media. Like there's this, art as the basis for the psyops, which are then implemented on the news to influence real life. But there's a continuum here. Real and fake. There's not a hard line between these things. All right, I'm scrolling through my notes. I'm going to check the rest of my bookmarks, see if we've covered everything I want to cover. Here's another one. This is an example of these crisis actors who are basically plants. You might even have them in your neighborhoods. Think about it. Like the next fake bowl cut shooter might be down the street from you, just setting the scene. So body cam footage of the Georgia shooter Colt Gray being questioned in 2023 after he threatened to do a shooting. So this is supposedly the FBI interviewing the shooter and his son. Oh, there he is. He is there. So this shows you that the act goes back at least a year.
Hey, Colt, what's going on, bud?
saying that somebody from your old address over there in Traditions that made a threat to shoot up a school.
For real?
Yes, sir.
What? Tell me what.
You have any kids or anything living
Yeah,
here?
Colt Gray.
Colt?
Yeah, Colt.
Big G on the door. Interesting. This is looking very, very hoaxy. In fact, this guy looks like an actor to me. This looks very fake. It just doesn't seem real.
My oldest son.
How old is he?
He's 13.
Do you have weapons in the house?
I do.
Are they accessible to him?
They are. I mean, there's nothing left.
Okay, I'm trying to see what that flag is. Is it a Confederate flag? Is it a MAGA flag? I just see a big G on it. A lot of G's in here. And he's got a blue cup. Anyway, I'm kind of hyper analyzing this because I don't think it's real. Here's his son comes out before he has the long hair. Before he was ready for his big close up. And he's dressed all in blue with a blue cap. Looks kind of like a younger, thinner Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, a skinnier Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't think he was ever thin. So this is just pointing out how the FBI knew the shooter was there. And this helps the conspiracy theorists form their stories about how it was allowed to happen. Listen to this. Rob Ferguson. Sometimes, you know, like some people are like, oh, the Trump shooting was fake, but they still think other people died. Sometimes people will get it half right because they start to embrace a little bit of critical thinking. So Rob Ferguson says, chemtrailers, anti-vaxxers, free-dummers, all driven by foreign propaganda. The aim isn't for you to believe any of this nonsense. The aim is division, discord, and distrust. The conspiracy theory is the goal. If you've been conned, the propaganda worked. I agree with this. The conspiracy theories, the red pills, turn you into a propaganda mule, and they terrify you. And then you spread the terrorism. You spread the fear. You tell people to be afraid of clouds and 5G towers. You see what I mean? This is somebody who has it half right. He's not an auto hoaxer, so obviously he's not entirely right, but he's correct. This is what I called earlier the active measure. The active measure is to turn you into a truther, because the truther is just the alt liar. In every instance, show me where it's not true. Show me where the truthers have had a point and they didn't contextualize it in such a way as to dilute it. Like you kind of can't. Okay, someone said the phones are not open. I just turned them back on, so if you want to try calling back again. That G looks like I got printed out on a Windows 98 PC. Yeah, you know, I look at some of the propaganda and the actors and the wardrobes, the special effects, and they don't keep up. Like NASA's 10 years behind on special effects. It's actually embarrassing. And I say this as a former film studies major. Their special effects are not contemporary. And I've been saying that they need to bring down the ISS for that reason, if nothing else. Okay, I have to upload some archives and send out some orders. If you didn't know, I'm working on getting the tabloid out, and I'm going to order in larger volume. I had a failed attempt at getting the print going, and that's simply because I didn't have enough pre-orders to get over a hump, and I didn't know it was there. I didn't know the price was going to be that high because I had originally planned it for a 16 page, but it ended up being a 32 page. So the Insider, as advertised, is going to be released. It's already complete. It's ready to print. I just had a short as far as the budget, but that's going to be fixed very soon with these. And I want to say thanks to those who have picked these up. I have another one that's going up for sale later on tonight on my Ko-Fi shop, and this is a watercolored Penguinotti, which are the cyborg penguins. This one's holding a boombox. This one is already sold, but I have another one that's going to be going up for sale here shortly. I just haven't had time to list it, and I'm about to do so. So thanks for supporting this, and of course, we'll have more updates on everything. I'm going to keep following these stories. Rebel Ridge Tyreek. I think that's the big one at the moment. I want to see if it turns into something. We have Joker 2 coming out soon. This is the anniversary of 9/11. Election coming up. So I'm expecting a very interesting month ahead. Mango said, how long is the longest live show you've done? You know, we used to take breaks. If we took breaks and I came back in 10 minutes, lunch breaks, like I used to do, I do breaks here or there. Sometimes we do all-nighters. We would cover a lot of ground and play a lot of music and stuff, and we could probably schedule something like that at some point. All right, this is COVID 1984, Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms.
Data or deceit. Shut up, shut the door. Government media bent you over like a whore. COVID 1984, COVID 1984, COVID 1984, COVID 1984. What? Puzzle, face mask muzzle. I'm going to my grandma's house. Shut in, shut up, cover your mouth.